Hello everybody and welcome into my latest live video. Today it is Friday, January the 6th. Is it the 6th? 2023. It is Friday, TGIF. We are at the end of our first week of our first month of the new year. And I have not met my resolutions yet. Might need to give myself a little more time on that. Thanks you guys for hanging out and joining me. Thanks to Kelly Stewart for the $50 Amazon gift card, and to our friend Buster, Peter Laycock out in Scotland, who contributes his 50 pounds as normal, watching us all the way from Bonnie, Scotland. Welcome in all my friends in blue, and thank you to Todd Wickham with a $10 Canadian super chat. Oh, and there's Buster now with 10 pounds, who says, good evening, Carey, and everyone in the chat. All the best from Bonnie, Scotland, where the temperature in Edinburgh is 44 degrees Fahrenheit or 7 degrees Celsius. And it's raining. Yes, but never rains in Scotland, does it? Thank you for the weather update, Buster, and your kind and generous and consistent support. Mats Olof joins us from Sweden. It says, hello again. There's our friend Nick Poverman and Nick Aranis and John Williams. Gerardo Quintana Rue. Oystein says hello. Oystein watches us from Norway. Sherry McFarland. I haven't seen Sherry in a while. Sherry's done some of the thumbnails for the videos in the past. Gil Garcia and Frankie B. Good to see Frankie B. Leslie Cavins and Mark Gaines. Mike Visions with a 10-pound super chat just now says, hello, Carey, and all in the chat. All the best for the new year to all. Well, thank you, Mike, and all the best to you. Hopefully at the very least, a happy new year. Hopefully a productive one, and ideally a prosperous one. Eric P. says hello. Alan Spain says hello. John Bird says hello. Captain Blinsky enjoys my sweet haircut. Nice. You have great taste in hair. I'm enjoying it while I still have some. Garfield Rupe says hello. Thomas MacT and Vern Mahorny and the Greek all saying hello. Right on. Thanks again for hanging out with me this Friday afternoon or evening, depending on where you are in the world. Mats Olof says there's a snowstorm this evening and it's cold here in Sweden. It's cold in Sweden? When did this start? Still, I'll trade you. You want to come stay in Phoenix for a while? All right. Scotty in the chat says, hello from a cool Newtownards in Northern Ireland. Belated Happy New Year to you all. I don't know how to say that word. Newtownards. So the British, they have this way of like, and I know Ireland isn't British, but they have this similar way of like Worcestershire becomes Worcester. Well, that's why in the pandemic they had to get their Worcestershire shots. I don't know. Welcome in, everybody. Today I want to walk the walk that I talk. And part of that is my frustration with most reviews on the internet, whether that's YouTube or technical blogs, whatever, is they typically review a product right when it comes out. Everybody wants to be first, and they all come out with the content of the same thing at the same time. This is one reason I don't like to cover the Consumer Electronics Show. It is oversaturated with media and content creators all posting the same stuff at the same time, over and over and over. So Lisa Su from AMD comes out, starts talking about the AMD Ryzen 7000 series, and then what do you know? Every popular content creator and magazine and news site that covers tech content is all covering that right when it happens. It's all worded differently, but it's all saying the same thing. And then when will you hear about the Ryzen 7000 again? When it actually hits the market and they review it. And then when will you hear about it again? Likely never. So how do products hold up over time? What's it like to live with a product? How much time do you think a product reviewer has to evaluate a product and then say, yes, you should buy it, or no, you shouldn't? And furthermore, what if the product gets worse over time? How would you know? What if the product gets better through updates over time? How would you know unless people go back and review what it's been like to actually use the product they're reviewing, to rely on it for daily work, and to share their updated experience with everybody? So I can review a keyboard, but living with a keyboard, it's a very different experience when you start relying on it day to day. And if there's any shortcomings you didn't notice at first, there might be something that you didn't care for, but wasn't a big enough deal to knock it down in the review. But then after living with it, you're like, this is becoming untenable. This mouse drives me crazy. And I knew immediately when I started using it, it wasn't as nice as this cheaper mouse in how it felt and responded. But it's gotten a little better because I've adapted slightly and I figured out how to make it connect to Bluetooth mostly. Sometimes I still struggle, but it's connecting more times than not, which is the opposite of the initial experience with it, which is it was not connecting more times than not. So in that vein, what I have in front of you today is a tech product that is very uncommon, and that is this Western Digital EX4100 was initially introduced to the marketplace, are you sitting down? In 2015. Oh, I know what you're going to say, but Carey, what's the point of following up on an obsolete product? This is not an obsolete product. They are still manufactured and sold today. What? Yeah. Carey. Yeah. You're talking to yourself. Kinda. Are you telling me that that black box, technical box you got there is 7 years old? Yes. But I can buy one brand new, not used, at Amazon as though it just came out last week? Yes. Yes, that's what I'm saying. But Carey, you'll say. And I'll say, my name is Carey, please don't call me but. They haven't improved this product in 7 years? I guess they didn't need to. Well, that can't be right. You can go on Amazon right now and buy this product brand new that was introduced to the market 7 years ago. That's what I said. When does that ever happen in the industry? How come all the reviews I see on YouTube are all from 7 years ago? Because that's when the product was introduced. But how come nobody's reviewed it in the last 7 years? It ceases to exist after it's been reviewed. No one follows up. Or maybe not literally. There might be a reviewer out there who's lived with it and said, let me share my experience with owning this over the last few years. In fact, I know there are a couple. But if you type in EX4100 here on YouTube, most of the video reviews are all from 7 years ago, even though we can buy it today. Look, let me show you. Let's go over to Amazon real quick, and let me pull up my screen share. Let's see. Properties, OBS, screen share, and let's turn that on. And I guess I just need to take my video, put myself right over there. It's too big. Right over there. Let's do that for right now. That way you can still tell I'm still alive. Okay, so this is the Amazon page. And as you can see, we have the Western Digital 24 terabyte. It's the MyCloud, the EX or Expert series 4100. It is a 4-bay network attached storage with its model number. Now, nowhere on here would you see it was introduced in 2015. Like if you'd never seen this before, you'd think, oh, that's pretty cool. And you see that unlike other NAS devices from Synology or QNAP, for example, Western Digital is putting their own Western Digital NAS drives already in the device. And you think, well, isn't that convenient? A Western Digital NAS has Western Digital drives. Not only is it convenient, You see, if you were Western Digital, would you want your customers putting in your competitors' drives into your NAS? What could you do to prevent that? Well, you could put your own drives in your own NAS and mark it down so cheaply that you couldn't buy the drives separately from anybody and be anywhere close to this price. So in this case, you know, there's an 8 terabyte version, there's a 16 terabyte, there's a 24 terabyte, 32 terabyte, 40 terabyte, and a 56 terabyte version, all with the Western Digital Red NAS hard drives pre-installed. And of course, if you're like, look, I don't want to save money on my storage, I don't want to get a bargain price, I want to put my own drives in it, well, you can buy the diskless version, but it's $350. And then you got to buy 4 drives to put in there. So if you were to buy 4 16 terabyte drives, let's say we buy the Western Digital Reds, for example. Let's see, 16 terabyte Western Digital Red. See what those prices are. Those are $279.99, so there's $280. 280 times 4, let's bring up my calculator. 280 times 4 is going to set you back $1,120 plus the $350. So let's add another $350 onto that. And your total plus sales tax is $1,470. So when I'm telling you Western Digital is discounting the cost of the drives when it's included in the NAS, those were 4 16 terabyte drives, right? So how much storage is that? 16 times 4 is what? I'm trying to think what size drives would total 16. Oh, well here, this is a 16 terabyte, but that's made up of 4 terabyte drives. 16, 32.
48, 64.
Oh, they don't offer a 64. That was a terrible example I just gave. That was stupid. I saw the 16 terabyte. Let's try it with a 4 terabyte. Let's do that. Because we know this one comes with 4 terabyte. These are live and unscripted, so, you know, that's how much planning I put into it. 4 terabyte Western Digital Red. How much are those? So those are $70 a piece. All right, now we're talking. So let's go back to the calculator. I don't need a calculator for 70. 70 times 2 is 140. 140 times 2 is 280. 280 plus 350 is $630. And how much is the NAS? That's 16 terabytes. $967. Huh. Is my face red? That's actually a bit more, isn't it? Did I do the math wrong? Have I screwed up somewhere?
No.
It's $350 for the device. Maybe the deal's not there at 16 terabytes. I probably should have done this before the show. So let's take a look at the one that's on, for example, just because now I'm eating my own words here. The one that's, give me a chance to redeem myself. I know I'm not making this up. I'm looking at the numbers, and in my head, this is significantly cheaper than putting it together. So Western Digital 24 terabyte drive is on sale right now for $980. We're just going to round it up. Now the 24 terabyte drive consists of what drives? How do we get to 24? 8, 16, 24? No. What size drive are they using? 6 terabyte. There's 4 times 6.
6 times 4 is 24.
I didn't know there was a 6 terabyte drive. All right, so let's take a look at this. Western Digital. Oh, I don't want to be in a search. I want to be an Amazon search, not searching the entire internet. Okay, let's try this again. 6 terabyte Western Digital Red, and we need 4 of these. 6. Okay, they're $100 a piece. Math is super easy on this. So at $100 a piece, we need 4 of those. That's $400, and then we buy the diskless
$350.
at $350. We're only at 750. Wait a minute, I'm all confused. That's a $200 increase in the price at $979. I'm missing something. I'm not sure what it is, but there's something I'm leaving out here. Unless there are multiple 6 terabyte drives, which I don't think there are. Because that would be significantly cheaper to build it yourself. I might be jumping to conclusions here. Let's do Western Digital 6 terabyte red. Let's see if there are more expensive versions of the red. Here's a red for 109, and here's a red that's the Red Pro at 153. So if this contains the Red Pros at 153, then 4 of those would be a little over $600, plus the NAS at 350. You'd be almost right at their asking price. So that makes sense if these are 7200 RPM CMR drives with 256 meg cache. Let's see, do they specify that? Because if so, then that's still not a screaming deal, but it's fair. It just tells us it's got, come on, where is it? It just says 4 times 6 terabyte. Does it show the drives? Well, it's not specific. I don't know. I don't know which version of the red drive it is, but that certainly explains, it's definitely not the other way around. It is definitely not more expensive. If anything, it's a bargain. And I'm not exactly sure which piece I'm missing here, but I can tell you that that was one of the main appeals of buying this, was having it already propagated with the drives cheaper than you could do it. Now, some drives have become much cheaper over time, such as the 4 terabyte drive that this unit we're going to talk about came with. So, all right, enough of me embarrassing myself because I lack some information to explain this, because that's a sale price which is already discounted from what was a discounted list price. So there's some piece of this I'm missing, or drive prices have dropped and the NAS price has not followed suit, which is also possible, because this has been around since 2015, this NAS, and is still being sold today in stock. All right, so at least, you know, give me credit for knowing that. Holy cow. So I do everything real. I mean, when I talk to customers, this is sometimes what happens. We go off of information. The last information I had, and the market changes, and it's just quite possible that depending on what size drives you're getting, maybe it would be cheaper to get the diskless version, or maybe the price of the diskless version is cheaper now than it used to be. I don't know. But be that as it may, let's talk about why this is here today. Let me go back to camera 1. There I am. And we're going to talk about this. And I also need to get my chat room back. Okay, so the person that bought this needed the biggest amount of storage they could get. So they went to Fry's Electronics. Remember Fry's Electronics? And they bought this as a 16 terabyte storage, NAS storage drive. I've never heard of it before. So when they told me about it, they were upgrading. As many people who bought these 5 or more years ago want to upgrade. They just decide, I want more storage and I want more features. And Synology has all those apps. Remember I showed you this Synology? I should get a QNAP and also show you that as well. This is not a high performance drive by any stretch of the imagination, but you can run a Plex server on it. And for home use, these Western Digital MyClouds were really intended for home users, not for business users. So they're very simplistic. They have a very simple interface. There's not a whole lot of controls. There's not much in the way of apps you can put on it. But at the time when it came out, it was a pretty high-end processor at the time. It was like a Pentium level processor. And the redundancy on this unit is corporate grade or enterprise grade, which is bizarre to me because it's nothing else about this is enterprise grade. But let me bring it up to the camera and let me show you. First of all, I'm going to tell you what I like about this thing. Now, I have never turned this on. I'm just going to tell you right now. I took the drives out of it. I cleaned all the dust out of it, cleaned it down with some Windex. It was pretty dusty. It'd been sitting, running 24/7 every day since sometime in 2015. The drives have a manufacturing date of 2015 as well. There are no drive trays or tools or screws. I wish Synology did this. You just open the drive door, you slide the drive in, it locks in place, and then you close the drive door, lift up that little latch, and fully seat it. Your drive's installed. No screws, no sleds, no sleighs, no reindeer, no Santa. Nothing to break. No screws to lose. You don't have to take the cover off to change the drives out like you do on some. Look at the back. I'm going to get back to the front. Back to the feature, back to the front. I want to talk about the back for just a minute. Look at all the duplication. Not one, but two USB ports. Not one, but two Ethernet ports. And check this out. Two power ins. So you can have two power adapters plugged in at the same time, and if one fails, your NAS doesn't go down. Now, they don't include a second power adapter, and quite frankly, if your NAS goes down, in most cases, it's because of a bad power adapter, and they could have saved a lot of money by just giving you a second power connector, or they did give you a second power connector. You don't need a second power connector for most homes, but they could have given you a second power adapter. Mitch Morrison, our good friend, had his Synology power adapter go out. Synology said, oh, that error message means you need to replace your entire unit. And I said, that's a bunch of sassafras. Bring it over here. And in fact, he had a $7 power adapter die. We went on eBay and bought another one, and he's using his NAS to this day. Well, instead of two power adapters being plugged in at all times in case one dies, to avoid this going down, let it go down and grab your second power adapter for $7. It's a way less complicated setup. So you typically see this in corporate environments where they can't afford stuff to go down. That's a different story, right? Of course, it doesn't help you when power goes out. That's a bigger problem. Everything goes down. Now, take a look at the front. We have an LCD screen, and we can cycle through information, which I'll show you using, there's an up and down button. There is a USB up on the front, and there's a button to copy the USB in its entirety onto the storage drive. One button USB copy. I don't know why that's important. Copy and paste should work just fine. Then you've got your power button here, and and then your status of your drives lights up down at the bottom. That's all there is to it. You have a 120 millimeter cooling fan, and I'm told this thing is silent, completely silent. So if you're easily irritated by noises, these bigger hard drives, these 20 terabyte, 16 terabyte drives are very chattery. So if I put the Synology on the desktop here and put in a couple of 14, 16, or 20 terabyte drives in it, I can hear it on the other end of the house because there's no sound, right? The house is quiet. And I hear the chattering of the drive waking up from being asleep. Or if I'm accessing data off of the NAS in the other room, I hear it when it's pulling the data. I think it's kind of cool. But this is your power adapter. And then these are the 4 terabyte drives that I pulled out. And I have a video that shows you how to reset a drive back to factory settings. If you watched my Synology video where I said I'm setting this up for the first time, and when I plugged the drives in, it tried to carry them over from the previous NAS they were in, that's because I didn't erase the drives properly. Where my mistake was is I erased the array within the NAS itself and thought that was the same thing. But there's clearly still written data on hosted protected area or on certain areas of the boot sector that a format doesn't get rid of. So you have to reset the drive using the diskpart command and a command prompt, selecting the drive and using the clean command. Now I have a quick tips video how to reset a hard drive back to factory settings. It's not a secure erase, but for anybody who doesn't know any better, it's never been used. There's no partition, there's no data on it. I hope that should work this time. So we're emulating putting brand new drives in it. Now, you'll say, what's the drive? What's this thing over here? Well, the owner of this device works in IT. And I will tell you, for all of my customers that have NASs, we buy a spare drive, whatever the NAS has, we match that with an extra, just like your car has a spare tire. Because if we have a drive go out, we want to replace that in a business right now. So we take the drive that usually sits, for my clients, the drive just sits right on top. Nobody touches it. That's what it's for. So if we have a drive go out, the red light will turn on. Does this thing kick out emails to you if there's a problem?
Yes.
Sure. So then you are alerted that a drive has failed, but nobody in the office knows. It's because it's a RAID 5 configuration, assuming you set it up that way. It just works as it's always worked.
It also shows on the display.
Oh, and the display will tell you. So Synology doesn't have a display, I just go off the lights. So we know drive 3 is bad. We take drive 3 out, slide it out, put the replacement drive in, close it, and then what, do you have to log in and tell it to rebuild, or does it just do it all automatically? Do you remember?
You can do one or both.
So with the Synology, it doesn't happen automatically. You still have to log into it and authorize the rebuild. And it'll say, do you want to prioritize the rebuild, which is going to slow down the NAS anytime you access it? Or do you just want to do normal priority, which will take longer to do the rebuild, but nobody should notice? And the default is just to leave it at normal. Then we take the bad drive and we look at the date of manufacture. We look up what our purchase receipt date was. And if it's under warranty, I take it back with me and I set up the RMA on my own time, take it to the post office, get it packed properly. When the replacement comes in a couple weeks later, it goes right back on top. And didn't cost anybody anything except the postage and the time. That's how wonderful that is. 0 data loss. So I thought we would go through installing brand new drives into this device, turning it on and seeing what it's like to configure it. I want to emphasize, I have never used this before. So I have, apart from looking at some reviews from 7 years ago, I just have an idea of what the interface looks like, but I'm not real sure how it's set up. We're not going to even need this drive. The manufacturing date on everything is 2015. This is 2015. Those drives are 2015. This thing has never had a problem. It's never, ever needed a repair. None of those drives have ever been repaired. All those drives are 100% working condition and have been since they were purchased in 2015. So,
including during power losses.
Sure, I'm sure you've had power losses since in the last 7 years. Now, you're not going to have the B-tree file system or the Butterfuss file system. And the BTRFS file system is much, much better at avoiding data rot, or bit rot, things that can occur through improper shutdowns where the file system can get corrupt. This is probably using EXT3 or 4, I imagine.
Yeah.
So it's an old system. You're going to have to buy a more modern, because BTRFS didn't exist until not too long ago. I can't remember, before they implemented it. And I think Red Hat still won't even use BTRFS. As far as I know, they haven't authorized it yet. I don't think they do. I think it's Wikipedia time. I think Red Hat said no. I think they don't trust it for some reason. It doesn't pass there. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I think the general consensus, even from the creator of EXT3 and 4, will say B-tree file system is far superior. So what that means is it's faster, it's more efficient, and data integrity is more guaranteed or less likely to have data integrity issues on the B-tree file system than on EXT3 or 4. Just suffer a few corruptions and let me know what you think. But this has done really well. So despite being improperly shut off through power outages, it's never had any data loss, it's never had any drive failures, but it is lacking in power and in, by today's standards, and in features. Like, nothing touches the Synology with all those apps you can download like a smartphone. This has just a handful. But back in 2015, this was amazing. And for many people, it's still all they need. For other people, they've grown and their needs have grown. And now even though this works perfectly fine, it's just,
Not enough storage.
well, I mean, yes. So at 4 times 4 terabytes, especially if you put it in a RAID 5, you're losing one of those 4 terabyte drives. So 16 terabytes becomes 12, right? And then out of the 12, when you do the math at 1024, then you're actually at like 10.8. So regardless, it's still 12, just reporting it differently. Back to the whole pizza. Does that pizza have 8 slices or 4? It better only have 4. I'm not hungry enough to eat 8. It's the same. Okay. So check this out. I'm going to show you how to put the drives in.
Camera?
Yeah, should we get the close-up camera? We'll show this all close up. We'll get to the nitty-gritty here. I love, this should be a law. No drive sleds, no screws, no tools. If you have to open a NAS to change the drives, I don't want it. So that white Synology that I showed you, that's an entry-level Synology. And even though these drives have never needed to be changed since they were installed, I've been in this business a long time. And while hard drive spinning, hard drive reliability has definitely gone way up, they still fail. And when they fail, I need to get in and out as quickly as possible. I'm billing by the hour. So for customers, there's no good reason not to do this. It adds a little cost, I suppose, to the unit, though I can't imagine having to have the little screws in the drive sleds isn't also adding cost to the unit. So this is going to go in one way or the other. Let's go ahead and get that camera turned on. Let me step around for just a minute and we'll activate the close-up camera and we'll put Cam Girl to work today. Nick Poverman says, our NAS at work is hooked up to an enterprise battery backup. It lasts about an hour. Yes, you can hook UPSs up to these. That's primarily what one of the USB ports is for. So the NAS can communicate with the UPS and understand how much battery life is left and know to shut itself down so it doesn't get powered off incorrectly and unexpectedly, and you end up with a file corruption. That's how file corruptions happen. Do you want file corruption? I don't think you do. Corruption's not good. With great power, without great power comes great corruption. I think I'm not remembering that right. Do you know where's my close-up camera? Where did it go? Camera 1, camera 2. Nope, it's not that. Capture, HDMI input. Nope. Oh, close-up camera. That's what I named it. Really, I got to do something about this screen or my eyes. All right, let's try activating that. Yeah, you're good. Come on forward. Okay. You know, just thinking that Spider-Man quote. It's a dad joke. I was at Walmart the other day, and you're already laughing.
Sorry.
Anyway, they had Batman shampoo. Yeah. I was kind of upset because I didn't see Conditioner Gordon. Yeah. All right. I'm glad you liked it. All right. So here's our drive, right? There's our manufacturing date right there. No tools. Come down here. We're going to, where's the connector? It's at the bottom. So with the connector facing down, we're just going to put any drive in any slot. Don't force anything. It should go in nice and easy. I don't think it likes the flavor. It's spitting it out. Am I doing something wrong? Maybe it doesn't click in. Let's just maybe try another one. Let's go to the next one. It doesn't click in?
No.
All right, so I guess when you close the door, they hold them in. Well, that's something I would have changed. All right, so what you want to do is push it all the way back, make sure nothing's obstructing it, okay? And we're going to do that. All 4 drives are exactly the same and came with the unit when it was purchased. They were pre-installed. So now we can, it still seems like they should lock in. So I guess you have to push it in and then lift the door. I don't think that's right. I think I'm doing something wrong. I mean, it looks right to me. Again, you don't want to use any great force. That's interesting, but maybe that's the door's job, is to hold it in position. But the door won't close unless you lift up the release and then push it forward. And you're going to have to use some muscle here. Push that in and lock it down. If I just push the door like this, oh, I guess that works too. I guess I feel that's kind of mean to the hardware. I would rather be gentle with it, but I guess you can just lock it in like that. Okay, and if you look on the back of the unit, look down here, you'll see this was manufactured also in 2015. It should say something. Does it have a date on there? Got MAC addresses, serial numbers. I don't see a manufacturing date. Maybe I saw it on the power adapter. Let's take a look at the power adapter. I hate it when the power adapter has a different company name on it. You would never know this goes to a Western Digital device.
4/27/2015.
Where do you see that? Down here?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, 4/27/2015 is when the power adapter was manufactured. The power adapter came with the unit. But the power adapter doesn't say Western Digital on it. So I would get a label maker, because you absolutely don't want to mix these power adapters up with other electronics in your house, or it could let the smoke out. These run on smoke.
Yeah.
If you let the smoke out, they don't run anymore.
And Magic Pixie does.
Well, you definitely, yeah, the IBM commercial with Magic Pixie does. Wow. Okay, so now let's just power this thing up for the first time. Duncanny says, wow, that looks unnerving. Mike Vision says, flip the drives around. No, so the problem is you can physically look inside of here, just to show you what I'm looking at. Maybe we've got the close-up camera. So you see the connector on the drive is right here. Now look inside of there and look for the connector. That's a little tough to see. Let's see if I can. It's really dark in there. Let me get a flashlight. Because you got to see where that plugs in. No differently than if you're plugging a lamp into an outlet, you got to align it with the socket, or it's not going to go in, right? So just to confirm that I'm doing everything correct, remember, I've never done this before. I could be doing something wrong, but let's grab a flashlight and let's look in there. So you see the SATA connector is on the left. So we got to make sure that the SATA connector, it's left and down, right? It's not up and to the right, it's not up and to the left, it's left and down. So when we look at this drive, and you can imagine this drive's gonna go in like that, we need this is up and to the right, this is down and to the right. And if I flip the drive the opposite way, right becomes left. So when you're looking at it like this, when I turn it the opposite way, we are now down and to the left, which is exactly where the connector is. It's to the left, and this connector is now on this side of the drive, the left side. So when we slide that in, it's definitely positioned correctly. And I know that because it won't go all the way in. If I put this in the other way, there's the little socket. It's going to hit the socket that's down on the bottom left is going to hit this part of the drive, so it won't sink. The drive won't recess as far in. It's got to go in further than that. So if I put this in backwards, and again, just an opportunity for explanation. If you put that in backwards, no, it does go all the way in. It does exactly the same thing. There's no indication that I've put this in the right direction because it doesn't lock in either way. That doesn't seem right to me. Normally on drive bays like this, it'll stop right about there. It won't let you close the door. So that is surprising to me. I'm really surprised. But you'll see, it's doing the same thing. It goes in about yay far, and it kicks it back out. And those are the only two ways we can put it in. Obviously, you don't want the connector facing out that way. That ain't gonna work, right? So it can only go in one of two ways. It either goes in this way or it goes in that way. That's all the choices you have. So by visually looking in there, we see the connectors down and to the left, and we know our options are down and to the left or up and to the right. So I'm just surprised that let us put the drive in. Now it goes in much further now. I want you to see this because look how far that drive goes in. Look at how much space between the edge of the drive and the edge of the NAS. Okay, and now let me turn the drive around, put it in the wrong way, and now it won't recess into that socket, so it won't go in as deep. Watch. Well, I don't know, that looks pretty darn close actually. It's very subtle. There's a slight difference. Can I close the door with that in rung? No, look, it won't let me close. So it's about a little less than a half an inch. It's effectively this much room. That's sinking in additionally, but I sure wish it would lock in place. I understand why it kicks out. If it locked in there and I opened the door, how would I get the drive out? But it'd be nice if it was like a clickable pen where you push it in and it would pop out. So I'm guessing why this works this way, but that's how we know we didn't put the drives in backwards, all right? Just so you know, that's how we can gain confidence and move forward without worrying. Because again, I've never set one of these up before. Maybe I did put one in backwards. I appreciate you brought up that question so that we can remove that doubt in its entirety and we can move forward with confidence, knowing everything we've done so far is 100% accurate. And if we have problems moving forward, it has nothing to do with this. This helps when you're setting up any new hardware, is to understand as you're going that your foundation that you're building and that you're going to build on is solid. You don't just do the whole thing and power it up and hope for the best. That's a surefire way to get yourself into a downward spiral of diagnostics that has no beginning and no end. Bob R. says it's snowing out in Boston, Massachusetts. Yeah, the East Coast has been really getting hit hard with it. Kind of jealous, though. I miss the snow and the seasons. All right, I'm going to plug in the power adapter. So I'll just find somewhere down here to plug that into. There we go. And we'll plug this into either one of these works the same. It doesn't matter which one we use. When you brought it to me, it was like that, but we can plug it in down here. Doesn't matter. They both do the same job. So I'm going to put it there. I need an Ethernet cable, and we're going to plug in from yesterday's Ubiquiti router review, and we're going to plug that, again, doesn't matter which one of these you use. And then we'll turn this around, see, oh, look, we already got a light on. This is not on, though. Come around here, and now we're going to do our first power on. You'll see the LCD screen lights up. Pull it back just a little bit. I want to see these drive lights. You should see it initialize all the drives. So drive 1 initialized, drive 2. Drive 3 should be next. Good. And then drive 4. Okay, good. Then you'll see the power light's blinking. If it's blinking, it's not ready yet. That's pretty universal on most NASs I've worked with, regardless of manufacturer. And I can hear that fan pretty loudly now. Marco says, Carey, I have the same metal rack in the background. Great minds think alike. I guess we will shop at Costco. I'm not catching the whole conversation in the chat, but Duncan, says he doesn't like the fact they made them only accessible for their own proprietary drives. Who are you talking about? I'm not aware of any NAS manufacturer that requires their own drives. They might prefer them, but there is none that I'm aware of. So now we're getting some updates here. You can put Seagate drives in this. You can put any drives in this, but you definitely want to use NAS drives if you want reliability. I'm not aware of any NAS device in the existence on the face of this planet that requires a specific brand of drive, but it would be in your best interest to use NAS drives. Marco says he's got about 50 feet of the same family of rack. Oh yeah, they make those racks in different lengths. Okay, so the fan just settled down. It all quieted down. Power light's still blinking, so it's got to put an operating system somehow on these drives that are unpartitioned and they're completely blank, just as though we took them fresh out of the box. Duncan says, not according to some Synology press releases. So I guess he's referring to Synology recommending their own Synology drives, which is true, but it's not a requirement, it's a recommendation. I've got a Synology with 4 20 terabyte drives in it. As far as I know, Synology doesn't make a 20 terabyte drive. And Synology will say, hey, these drives may not be compatible. But that's because they're brand new and Synology hasn't updated the DSM to recognize them as compatible yet. They will in an update, just like they did with the 18 terabyte drives and the 16 terabyte drives. If you put 16 terabyte drives in a Synology, it no longer says they're not compatible, or it could be not compatible, because the DSM's been updated and recognizes them now. And anytime there's a brand new size drive out, Synology has to add it to their database, and it could take them a couple months before that happens. So if it's not a part of the database, you get the same generic warning that these drives may not be compatible, and you have to acknowledge that before you continue.
Ready to configure.
Okay, so all the drives are red. That would indicate we have a problem. And right up here, can you kind of move the camera a little bit so we can get a clearer picture of that? It says name 1, EXT40.
4100.
Oh, 4100, yeah. There's our IP address. That's kind of cool. You can see that. What is that? Temperature and the version of OS that's on there. Fan speed is in, what's it say?
RPM.
Oh, I got you, the RPM. Drive status is healthy. Capacity is,
You need to set it up.
man, I cannot see this.
This is 0.
0 kilobytes free, because we have not set up a share on it yet. So there's no partition, there's no share. There's no volume. We have not created a volume, therefore the volume has failed because it doesn't exist. These are, again, reset drives. And then we're back to the beginning again. So now, how do we set this up? We're going to log into this via its web interface, just like we did with the review of the Synology. But I want you to remember, this is 7 years old. So the interface is 7 years old. Synology's interface is only a few months old, although it's built on an interface that looks very similar from a couple of years ago. But I'd have to get a Synology from 7 years ago to compare them to be fair. So let's be fair in this review and also keep in mind costs and performance and the ease of changing the drives and how quiet it is. So by today's standards, I have no doubt this will come up short to modern Synologies in price and features. However, there still may be reasons why you want this, especially if you're a home user who this was really designed for anyway. I would have never put this in a business because I already know it's going to give me a bunch of pre-made folders that I'm going to have to remove. In my businesses that I maintain, we have one folder, one share, and everybody uses one share, and we create folders within that share. For example, we might have a folder that says templates for fax or letterhead. We could have a folder that says open cases, and then in that open cases folder, the name of the case, and within that folder, all of the documents pursuant to that case. Then we have closed cases. That's kept for documentary purposes. If something were to come up a few years from now in regards to that previous case, they hold on to those for a certain number of years. And then we have folders and folders and folders and folders and folders. And we do this because we don't want to artificially limit ourselves with a volume size that we're eventually going to hit the wall on. How do we know ahead of time how much volume size we're going to need? So if we had a volume for open cases and a volume for closed cases, we don't know, are we going to get a ton of closed cases this year? Are a bunch of cases going to go away in the case of a law firm? Or are we going to get a ton of new open cases? And which one are we going to run out of room with first? Because it will happen. I just don't know when. So what I'd rather do is not put any artificial voluntary limitations on our space. Instead of partitions, listen to me. Use folders. Folders. You no longer need to separate things out in partitions. This is not 1992. If it was 1992, I'd be telling you the exact opposite because of the file system we were using and the cluster slack space you'd be losing from small files. You could fill up your 200 megabyte drive with only 100 megabytes on it and scratch your head and go, how did that happen? Well, because there's no cluster sharing, and if a small file consumes just a piece of a cluster, the rest of that cluster is not available for anything else, and somehow you've used up 200 megs with 100 megs of data. NTFS doesn't do that. The new technology file system that Microsoft uses no longer does that. Cluster sizes are maintained and can be shared. So the reason for partitioning, people say, is, well, then if my operating system dies, my data is not affected. Well, that's not necessarily true. And furthermore, what if the side that your data's on fails? Or it's easier to back up and restore. But it isn't. Not today. Programs like Acronis, you can back up just certain files and folders. You can back up the entire thing. And this whole logic carries over from when... How many times have you met somebody in your life, especially when you were younger, and you thought, man, that person is old. I can't see why they're doing whatever it is. They got a push lawnmower. You're like, why would anybody use a push lawnmower when you can get a motor? That's a lot of work to push a manual lawn cutter with the rotating thing on it, and you push it. And then some kid today may go, why is this guy using a loud, stinky lawnmower when he can get an electric one? And some other kid's going, why is this guy walking with his lawnmower? He's getting on his what's it called? The skate thing? The motorized skate? And he's just leaning forward on his motorized skate, letting the skate push him as he's pushing the mower, right? Each generation thinks the one before them was working too hard. Well, I'm telling you, if you're still doing the things that you learned to do in the 90s with regards to your data, and that works for you, have at it. But you're working way harder than you need to, and you're taking risks you don't need to take. But if that's what you like, it's your data, it's your life, have at it. For anybody else, be aware there's a better way. And if you want to make your life easier, less complicated, come join us. Come join us now. And if you want to stay in 1996, you're welcome to stay there. But the rest of us, let's keep moving forward. So with this device here, this is very unusual that something like this is still manufactured and sold today without much change. I can't tell the difference from this unit to if I get on Amazon and order another one today. The software is the same, the box is the same, everything is exactly the same. When does this happen in the world of technology? And furthermore, how come more people don't talk about it? It's like it's all we care about for about 20 minutes, and then we never think about it again. It is the highest priority for so many people to talk about, look at what's new. And then after 20 minutes, it's not new anymore, and it never, ever gets discussed again because something else new. It's like a level of ADHD. Squirrel. See what I'm saying? That's what I'm saying. It's like you can't stay focused. Remember when you talked about this 7 years ago? Oh man, I forgot about that. Do you know it's
awesome,
still?
Awesome, man. It's awesome today.
I'm just trying to make a point here. This doesn't happen very often.
Configure it.
And it doesn't mean it's bad. All right. It doesn't mean also that there's nothing better, but it doesn't mean that that's bad. It just cracks me up that this was so many videos on YouTube 7 years ago, and then finding anything newer than that is like trying to find hen's teeth and made of unobtainium. All right, I don't know how to configure this. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to my Windows 11 Nook that's over here. So let me bring up, oh, wrong mouse, Carey. Let me HDMI input. Okay, you're clear. Thank you, camera girl.
You're welcome.
And let's go to full screen for Carey so I can see. You guys at home can see the same. All right, now I'm on the Nook with Windows 11. All right, how do I get to this thing? Well, it did tell me its IP address. It doesn't have like a URL I can go to, does it? Well, the internet works on it. What was the IP address on this thing? It was 192.168. How else do you find it? Is there a command to find it?
I'm not going to tell you because I have a corporate perspective.
I don't want to hear your corporate perspective.
Just look at the IP.
Yeah, I'm just going to read the screen and see what the IP address is. So I'll flip through the options on the screen. It says it's 135.240. That's easy. So I'm going to just type that in on the screen here. 135.240. And we'll hit enter, and that should take us to the web interface. And it does. This is the web interface. My first time ever seeing this. So bear with me. I'm going to figure it. This is the CareyHolzman experience. We're taking a journey together of discovery and of learning. And instead of me just telling you stuff, I find it doesn't really stick. But if you experience it along with me as though we're doing it together, it's as though you experienced it yourself. And so the mistakes I make, the misunderstandings that I have, we have together. And I think it's a more effective way of learning. Some people don't have the patience for learning. But these types of lessons, in my experience, are far more effective in sticking with you. And that's why we do it this way. Okay, so is there a default password on this thing? Just
admin, no password.
No password, just hit login. No, it says incorrect credentials. Let me try password. Log in. No. Let me try admin. Log in. No. Admin and admin. No. You want to come here and type your old password? Because I assume the password's saved on the drives, and by wiping the drives, I wipe the unit. But maybe your old password is still in play here. So will you, I don't see a reset button on this. Oh, it does have a reset button. I'll tell you what, never mind. I'm going to just hit the reset button on the back of the unit, which is what I should have done before showtime in order to... that's impressive. I think on a Synology, if I take the drives out, it doesn't have any memory of anything. So if this has got some NAND, that's, let's see here. System is rebooting. Okay, so what I've done is I've grabbed a small pin, and on the back of the unit, if you look back at the video, which you cannot do right now while it's live because I don't have DVR mode enabled because it was driving me crazy when people in the chat room are answering questions and making comments about something I did a half an hour ago. When the video's done, we can go back and look at that. But at the very top, above the USB ports, in the back of this unit, there's a small hole that says reset. So I'm concerned that the previous owner's password was still maintained on here. And in order to replicate a true unboxing experience 7 years later, well, I hear the fan kicking up, so I know it's rebooting. In order to emulate that accurately, this would have been effectively reset when it was new in the box. I reset the drives. Each time I make little errors like this in my setups, it's a lesson for me that sticks with me. And it just means the more I do this, the more thorough I'll be pre-show as far as trying to avoid this. However, there are valuable lessons in this for people who want to know, how do you get past the password you forgot? Well, we just simply hit the reset button in the back, and that's a good thing to know because people forget their passwords all the time. It doesn't necessarily erase the drives. I believe that erasing the drives would reset the password, that all the data was stored on the drives and that the machine itself wouldn't store it. I think that's how it works with Synology, but I could be mistaken. But Western Digital, my guess is if you're true, if you know if what you're saying is true and there's no password, then it's still looking for your old password. So we're rebooting it after a reset. That restores everything to factory settings. We still haven't set any partitions or volumes or RAID arrays on the drives yet. So this should truly be in out-of-the-box condition now. With the keyword being should be. You know, when you get in the car and you go to drive somewhere, you don't know what's going to happen on the road. You don't know if a kid or a dog or a ball is going to be in the middle of the road. You don't know if there's an accident up ahead. You don't know if there's construction. You don't know if the car in front of you has got a truckload of stuff and it's starting to fall onto the road and you've got to veer around it. You were just wanting to go to Walmart. And here you are making a video showing people, here's how I go to Walmart. And then all of these unexpected things happen, right? And maybe in the instant, you don't react properly. And then there will be people online that will criticize you for that. So what do people do? They don't go live. They film it. If anything like that happens, you either scrap the project or you reshoot pieces of it, edit it together, and show people no mistakes. But that's not the way life is. And we should not be afraid of mistakes. If you're not making mistakes, you aren't learning. And if you're not learning, you're not growing. You're just like, you know what? This is all life has to offer. I don't need to know anymore. Hey, that's on you, man. I always want to keep learning. I always want to keep making mistakes. What I don't want to do, and this is critical, is I don't want to make the same mistake over and over again. That is an entirely different thing. So if you're not making mistakes, you aren't learning. All you're doing is you're confirming what you thought you already knew. There's no growth in that. I want to grow. I want to make the most, I want to get the most out of life in the temporary time that I'm here. And that requires me to figure things out. Could I read the documentation? Absolutely, but where's the fun in that? I'm a game player. I got into this computer stuff because I like playing arcade games. I like playing Zork on the TRS-80. You had to figure it out. Any documentation was called a walkthrough, and it was called cheating. So I don't like to cheat. I see that as cheating, and it takes the fun out of the game. So there are going to be mistakes in my videos, and they're not a big deal because a professional makes mistakes and then keeps moving forward and addresses it and doesn't impact the project. A hobbyist might make a mistake and not know what to do, and then they're stuck, and then they end the video because they don't know what to do. So that's the primary difference. It's not that professionals don't make mistakes. It's that it's not a big deal. It's part of the job. Okay, that has rebooted. Let me try logging back in again and see if a blank password will work this time. Okay, click that. Full screen. OBS needs a hotkey for the full screen. And am I on the same IP address, I wonder? Since it's rebooted, I don't know if it got assigned the same IP address or not. Let's just hit enter. Yeah, log in. Yeah, so it kept your password. That's interesting. Okay, so we're just gonna type.
You didn't reset it.
Well, I didn't. I thought that information was stored on the drives. Yeah. Well, clearly that's the case. And Synology, I might be remembering it wrong. Maybe it's the same. This is my password. This is my password. Can I use the right mouse? Apply. Okay, what do we got up here? We got I don't want that. We've got home, users, shares, apps. Well, it's called a My Cloud, so, but I wouldn't use the cloud part of it. That's just a security concern I wouldn't want to deal with. But you could. It's just me. Let's set up my RAID volume. I guess that's the first thing I need to do. Switch to just a bunch of disks. No. Spanning. No. RAID 0. No. RAID 1. No. RAID 5. Yes. And then, of course, RAID 10, which is RAID 1 and RAID 0. That's how they get to 10. RAID 5. Switch to RAID 5, which is weird. We're not switching, we're creating. That's bad language right there, because that implies we have something else. We have nothing right now. So we are creating a RAID 5. Next, semantics. But it matters in technical documentation. Ooh, I hear the drives. Okay, configure RAID mode. Changing the RAID mode will erase all data. There should be no existing RAID mode. Drive set self-test performed to creating boot volume. Oh, that's why it's chattering. It's running a self-test on all 4 drives at the same time right now. And the chattering went away and it went up 10%. These drives will not be accessible while the wait away is being created. All right.
This is the only time this thing is noisy. The only time.
Yeah, well, I imagine. And this is, you did this once in the whole time you've owned it in 7 years. So this is your configuration, which, just like buying a new car, you got to set the seat and mirrors, right? You should only have to do it once if you're the only driver. And it might take a little while to really dial it in. I mean, but I'm just saying, when I'm driving a new car, I adjust the seat and mirrors because I'm anxious. I want to start driving it. And then as I drive it, I realize, the seat's a little too close, or the seat's a little too low, or the mirror on my left side is stuck out a little too far. And I make those little fine-tuning adjustments as I drive it. And that happens usually within the first week or 2. And beyond that, I never touch it again, ever, unless somebody else drives the car. And then that's when if you have a seat memory, set it so you don't have to go through all that again. Not that it's that big of a deal. Our life is so tough if I have to readjust my seat or my mirror to where I exactly had it before, and no other position even close is good enough.
Oh no, I have to press
But I can never be sure exactly where it was. It just doesn't feel right anymore, and it'll never feel right again. What a terrible attitude to have. All right, so we're almost done with our self-test to make sure the drives are healthy before creating an array, which is a good idea. No different than they'd want to make sure somebody is healthy before performing an organ transplant, right? You got to be sick to need an organ transplant, but you don't need to be getting a kidney if your heart's about to fail anyway, when there's somebody else who needs a kidney who doesn't have a. All right, so we want to make sure before we start trusting this with our data that the drives, see, this thing is skeptical. I like it. It doesn't assume the new drives are okay or that they are new drives. So next, what's the next thing? Configure RAID 5, which is a spare disk.
RAID 5 Plus.
RAID 5 Plus, they call it. Deselect create spare disk if you do not want to create a RAID 5 Plus spare. I thought a RAID 5 automatically had a spare. A RAID 5 Plus spare. Resize the RAID 5 volume, and if you do not use all the space, click configure the remaining disk as spanning. What? Configure the RAID 5 Plus spare. Click the create spare disk checkbox. Disk 4 will then become the hot spare. Oh, I don't like that. I don't like that at all. So what it's saying is it's going to make a RAID array out of drives 1, 2, and 3. And then drive 4 is going to be the spare. But normally the way RAID 5 works, and I guess that's why they're calling it RAID Plus, is it uses all 4 drives, and any one of them becomes, 3 of them are spare. I guess at the end of the day, does it make any difference? You're still going to wind up with the same amount of space. It's just the concept. So it's still going to be 12 terabytes at the end of the day. It just means one drive doesn't get used. That's what bothers me. It's just going to sit there as a hot spare with power for no purpose other than to kick on. It's what?
Self-healing.
Well,
if there's a hot spare and one of the drives fails, it'll self-heal.
I got you. But that's what RAID 5 does by default.
No, if a drive fails in a RAID 5, you have to replace the drive.
You're still going to have to replace the failed drive regardless.
Sure, but this will self-heal.
It's not really self-healing. If you lose a drive in RAID 5, it still works exactly as it's always worked, only you got a red light on.
Right. But then
there would be no healing necessary on a RAID 5. There would be no healing necessary. If anything, that's slower and more inconvenient.
I didn't do that. So.
What did you do?
I skipped it. I didn't have to do that. I didn't think that was necessary.
So how do you create a non...
Just go next. Don't check the box, just go.
Oh, I see. The box is to create a
Correct.
spare. I don't want to create a spare.
Right.
Next. This section allows you to rebuild the RAID if it becomes corrupted. Enable auto rebuild. Oh, that sounds good to me.
Yeah.
And then next. Volume 1, RAID 5. See, it's still 12. That hasn't changed. Locked or unlocked? What does that do? Oh, encryption. I don't want encryption because that'll make any data recovery impossible. Volume name and the format. Yeah, using drives 1, 2, 3, and 4. The ext4 file system, which talked about already. Yeah, that looks right. Why is there a key here? What does that say?
Encryption disabled.
Oh, good. Well, that's confusing. It shouldn't show me a key if it's not encrypted. It should show me a lock that's open or closed like it did on the previous screen. They've changed the nomenclature. This is what happens when engineers write stuff. They don't know how real people, they don't know how regular non-technical people see all these little details, and it confuses them. But to the engineer, it's the same thing.
Confuse me.
Oh, I've been there. I've argued a lot with engineers. Switch to RAID 5. You are about to reformat the hard drives. All data will be erased. Do you want to continue? Finish. I guess finish is saying yes. So again, the engineer is asking me a question, and he's not offering me yes or no. He asked me, I'm going to assume it's a he, a yes or no question. And some upper management approved this interface, by the way. This is a real problem in the industry. The engineers should not be writing this. And in some companies, they actually have designers who do the graphical user interface. The engineers just do what they're told. Make the interface say this. And they take a human perspective. Clearly, they're not doing that over at Western Digital. The data volume of your MyCloud EX4100 is being formatted. Please wait. Now, on the Synology, we could start using it immediately while it's formatting. So how long is this going to take?
That's going to take, could be up to 10 minutes.
10 minutes?
Up to.
That's like an hour in showtime.
This is 2015. But it was a workhorse.
I know. Got to keep in mind it's 2015. So the modern NASs, when it comes to formatting, it does it in the background, and the interface allows you to move on, start creating your shares, and do whatever you want to do to keep configuring, or to start using the NAS once you've configured it. Well, it formats and does any other processing in the background. So that's sort of par for the course given 2015, I suppose. The Seagate Black Armors, you could have to wait 24 hours on a large enough array before you could start using the NAS. All right, we'll check back in on that. In the meantime, I've really not been paying attention to the chat room, so if you have any questions and I've not addressed them, it's because I haven't seen them. Speak now in the chat and I'll see it. And if it's something I can answer, I will do my best. Nick Poverman says, remember this was 7 years ago and not in America. Oh, I don't know that it wasn't in America. I'm pretty sure Western Digital's engineers wrote the interface in America. It was probably manufactured overseas, but it was engineered, I'm sure, here in the USA. Could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's how that works. Icarana says Windows 8.1 goes end of life in 5 days. Anybody still using Windows 8.1?
I hope not.
Oof. Well, that's its own punishment.
Yeah.
AJ Haverkamp says choosing just a bunch of disks is the option to skip the parity disk in a NAS. Yeah, but why would you want to do that? Why would you want to? Parity is just basically checking to make sure everything's okay and that it works. If you are that freewheeling, like, I hope you're not launching rockets, because it sounds to me like you aren't long for this earth. There's a certain level of impatience that will lead to its own punishment. And when you're setting up a brand new RAID array that's going to hold your data, I would advise you to make sure that it is set up properly with all of the checks and double checks in place before you start relying on this thing. Because if you skip those parity checks and you're having parity errors, you know how you're going to realize that when your data is all corrupted or missing and there's no recovery possible. And then you know what you're going to do? You're going to be mad at the device instead of mad at the decision you made. That's what people do. So I have a problem with it even offering to not do a parity check, to be honest. I think it's ridiculous that anybody would be making such a terrible decision. But it's their device, it's their drives, it's their data. They cared enough to get a device for their data, but they don't care enough to make sure the data is intact. It's very weird to me. William Lin says the Western Digital MyCloud was manufactured in Thailand. Yes, well, Western Digital and Seagate both have hard drive manufacturing facilities in Thailand, so it's not uncommon that most of the manufacturing happens in Thailand. However, if you want to Google something, Google where Western Digital engineers created this. And I'm sure that the Western Digital engineers that created this device, they wrote out the schematics and the design, are here in the United States. And then they outsource the manufacturing. That's typically how that works. AJ says, I run Unraid with a parity disk. My remark was an answer to a question. Hey, AJ, I don't care what you do. I'm just letting viewers know that are reading these comments after this video is live, and maybe like me, they're only catching certain comments. Sometimes the chat moves fast, that I don't want anybody to interpret a shortcut that could have potential serious consequences. It's sort of like you gave a piece of information, but it wasn't fully disclosed about. If you choose to do that, this could happen. I was just filling in that little gap so that viewers just tuning in, or viewers, as I mentioned, that just see the comment like I did without any context, won't assume there's a faster way, because it is a faster way, but it's not worth it, in my opinion. So by providing the rest of the information, each person can decide for themselves if they're willing to take that risk. Samuel Kowalski's been a member now for 5 months. He says, fantastic video, Carey. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Samuel. Thank you. Roy Starman says, Carey, I use RoboForm to remember my Synology login. As you should. Agreed. These are videos I make for equipment I'm not personally using. So I will not log into anything personal. There are a lot of people out on the internet with nothing better to do than attack me and to try and hack me. And any personal information that I mistakenly disclose through educating others is up on the internet in perpetuity. And as long as it exists, somebody decides they don't like me, and I don't know who they are, I've never done anything to them, and they go on 8chan or 4chan and they get a bunch, they say, hey, help me attack this guy on YouTube. And these other losers are like, okay, hold on, let me get my juice box. And then they attack me. So I have to be very cautious over what I set up. And so because you don't see me use RoboForm on live videos, I can't, because then they would know my RoboForm login and that would be their beginning to attack me. They'd have one piece of the information that gets them 50% of the way there. So just because you don't see me using it on camera, you have to understand the crazy, insane people that are out there in the world with nothing else better to do, who feel they're being attacked when I don't even know who they are and I've never done anything to them. And then they will gang up on me. So I have to be very careful. I'm not afraid of them. They're just really annoying. It's like having the fly buzzing around the room and you can't seem to swat it. And eventually it's like, enough with this fly. You're not afraid of it. It's just really annoying. So the best way I have found, rather than put the information out there and say, come on, attack me, which is what I was doing, I just got tired. I was like, really? You guys are so lame. Your attacks are so lame. I got other things to do, you know? So that's why certain things like this, you won't see me use, show you my real IP address. You won't see me show you any real login. Anything I show that's a login, any password I use, it's nothing close to what the real thing is, for that reason. I know how they think. It's not that difficult. They're very simple people. All right.
60%.
60. Oh, it's got on the display. It tells us how far along our.
Sure does.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't realize that. Star Sang says, yeah, you can do without the hassle. Yeah, it's just annoying. So anyway, so I use RoboForm religiously. I love it. So you can imagine if somehow they got through my RoboForm and second factor authentication, boy, I'll tell you what, that would be impressive. None of them are that smart. They're not. So rather than tempt it, I don't want to give them a piece of the puzzle and let them figure the rest. Let them have no piece of the puzzle. They think they know what email address I use in RoboForm. They don't really know. So that's okay. They're just wasting their time. When is the RoboForm live tutorial video? That was already done 2 weeks ago. I hope you'll go back and watch that. 3 weeks ago, I think. Simon Davis joined us and we went through the RoboForm tutorial.
Do a search on YouTube on your channel for RoboForm.
Yeah, you could search YouTube for CareyHolzman space RoboForm and you will find Simon Davis doing a tutorial nearly once a year for the last 3 years, sometimes twice a year for the last 3 years. So they're mostly all the same over and over and over again. The good news is Simon's really getting it down to an art form with creating fake accounts that we can use. Yeah. Matt Zoloff says, I used Synology today. I will never use QNAP again. So what happened with QNAP? I've never used QNAP. I was thinking of buying one to evaluate it and see how it compares. Why should I not? I know they have a really ugly color scheme. It looks like it belongs in a hospital. But not all of them are that way, like the QNAP Pro. But the QNAP Pro 4-drive NAS is $540, significantly more money than Synology's. And I know it doesn't have as many apps as Synology has, but it's supposed to be faster. So I don't know. Tell me why. Tell me why. Is ASUS Store a good NAS? I've never used ASUS Store. Has anybody in the chat used them? And what do you think of them? Again, they are mostly for home users, whereas I would be leaning on Synology because of the business aspect of why I use NASs. I don't use NASs for fun. I don't use it to share my movies and music and pictures the way most home users do. I use it in a professional environment where my clients would lose millions of dollars potentially and potentially go out of business if they lost their data. So there is a massive amount of pressure on making sure that the device is reliable, that the device doesn't corrupt their data, and that the customers, year after year after year they've been in business, the data just gets more and more data. So we're just storing, when we first bought it, we might have had 10 or 20,000 files. Today we're probably somewhere around 500,000 files. So if they lose 500,000 files, they lose the entire history of the company. So we have to make backups on top of having the NAS. And those backups take a long time. It's a lot of data. And if the company should lose the backup and lose the NAS, they'll probably lose the company. So I don't look at Western Digital and I don't look at ASUS Store for business requirements. Therefore, I don't have any opinion one way or the other, but if you've got some experience with ASUS Store, NAS storage devices, let us know what your experience has been like. Would you recommend them? And under what environment are they best suited? Nick Poverman says, I've got a QNAP at my mother's house. It's been running for 5 years with no issues. Chris Johnson said, I started using RoboForm recently. I've been using a leading competitor's product and I became very concerned with the security breaches. Yep. Yep. Man, I'll tell you what, got ketchup in my eye. Now I have hindsight. Come on. It's a dad joke.
One of the best. Oh my.
Matt Zoloff said he lost 63,000 pictures on his QNAP thanks to a bug in QNAP. But let me ask you this, Matt Zoloff. Was the bug addressed in an update and you had auto updates turned off? And if you had updated it, you wouldn't have suffered? That's what I'm curious about. And why did you not have a backup of those pictures? And do you now back up your data, or do you just assume your data is going to be fine because it's on a NAS? Because a NAS is not a backup. So I'm not holding you out to put a spotlight on you to embarrass you, but to get a lesson from it. Share with us what you've learned. If all you learned was don't use QNAP, I don't think you learned the right lesson. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Did I steal that joke from Mitch? No, I did not. I stole it from somebody else. Craig Lilly wants to know, if you get banned from using the internet, would you be broadband? You're laughing way too much at the joke.
That was hilarious.
You know, I found out the manufacturer of yardsticks and rulers isn't making them any longer. You gotta think about that one. See, they're not making them any longer. See, that yardstick isn't gonna be made any longer. See, it's, never mind. Nick Poverman says that bug was because of a firmware issue. It was set up for auto firmware updates. He would have not had that problem. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Some people are like, I don't want those updates. Those updates just cause problems. And I try and tell you guys, it's the most, I don't want to get that flu shot. I've heard people getting the flu after that. They get really sick. I ruined that by saying they get the flu. They get the flu shot, they get really sick, so I'm not going to get the flu shot. So instead, they end up getting the flu. So they get really sick, right? It's for what reason, don't let me put words in your mouth, Matt Zoloff. For what reason did you not update the firmware and keep it updated? Matt Zoloff said, thankfully, I did have a backup and I uploaded all the time. Well, then you didn't lose 63,000 files. So did you lose files or did you not? See, because now what you've done is you've embellished your story to make it out different from reality. If what you're saying is, I had a backup and I recovered from my backup, then you didn't lose anything but some time. So I want to clarify what's being said so that there's no misinformation based on personal emotion where we embellish. I embellish, I do it. I get really angry and I get emotional at things, and every little tiny thing that's probably forgivable, I'm gonna make a big deal about just to justify my frustration. We're at 100%? Okay, so yeah, so if there was a firmware update, did you not know there was a firmware, or did you know and you intentionally avoided it? Or did you have auto updates enabled? Did you know that auto updates were an option? Like, I'm trying to figure out if there was a known bug. Usually, the bug is exposed when one person of significant media attention gets it. And then the company, through pressure of the public, addresses it and fixes it. And it typically goes out as an update because the company has to pay a developer and they got to pay for the update. It's expensive. But then when you have end users that are defiant and they refuse updates because they think they're being spied on or they think the updates make things worse, it completely holds back the rest of society. And it usually impacts the people that are resistant. They're the first ones to suffer. But it does create a domino effect on the internet as a whole, because once they get infected, typically they'll start spreading, the machine itself will start spreading it out, and they become part of the infection. And it's a responsibility that we all have on the internet to one another, but since we can't rely on people being courteous and doing the right thing, we have to protect ourselves. That's why we have car insurance. We have uninsured car insurance required in Phoenix, even though it's illegal to drive a car without insurance. But enough people drive without car insurance that it is required to have car insurance and to have uninsured insurance. Michigan's a no-fault state, so anybody hits you, you have to pay for it. There's nobody's fault. Somebody rear-ends you, it's nobody's fault. Michigan car experience is very, very expensive because of that. It's really stupid. All right. Nick Poverman says, most people don't know you can auto-update their NAS. I've showed so many people. So it should ask during the setup of the NAS, and maybe the QNAP didn't do that back then, but it most certainly should be doing it now. That's pretty standard practice. You saw, didn't it say auto-update on here, or have we not seen that?
I had it set up for auto-update.
No, but we just set it up. Didn't it just ask us auto-update, yes or no? No, it was auto-repair.
Correct.
So we haven't gotten to that part yet.
Correct.
Okay, so this is all part of the configuration. And I can tell you, when I set up NASs for my clients, I don't just go through the wizard and set it up. Once it's done with the wizard, I look at certain features like what's the auto power down time for the drives to go to sleep. I may not like that default. Are auto updates turned on? And if so, like with Synology, it defaults to only getting important updates. But there's 3 options. One is to alert you and let you decide if you want the update, which shouldn't be an option. The second option is install, well, the first option is install only important updates as soon as they're available. And then the middle option is install all updates, regardless of importance, as soon as they're possible. I want all updates. Who are they to tell me which updates I think are important? I think all updates are important, period. I don't even know what the update does. If it's an update and it was important enough for the developer to pay employees to write quality control check, put on the website, and pay for the bandwidth, that's all I need to know. They're not making that massive financial investment to harass you. They're trying to protect the product, and they're trying to ensure that you have a good experience with their product. And so if you refuse that update, or you don't know updates are available, what more can the company do? Come knock on your door and do it for you? Hello, I'm here from QNAP. Sure, at $10,000 per customer, we could probably implement that, right? It's very expensive. So you sort of have to, there's food here, but you have to get up and get your own plate of food. It's like a buffet. So this is set up. Let's go back to that. And let's see. Matt Zoloff says, they know there was some end of date. I just update as usually, always. Now they have protection. Yeah, but you're saying never use QNAP as though there's still a problem with QNAP. But you're saying QNAP has addressed this particular issue, but you're still holding on to your anger about this thing that happened in the past as though it's still a threat today and a reason not to buy their product. But I would argue that Synology had the same situation, and the way updates were applied with Synology were just better out of the box, so less Synology users suffered it. If you type in QNAP hack into Google, you'll see there was a period of time where it was all over the news, and they were telling people, update your QNAP. It was all over the media, and it was no other manufacturer. It was just QNAP. So that frightened me. But there's been nothing about QNAP ever since. So the problem's been resolved. It's sort of like, don't touch that, it's dirty. Well, it was dirty 3 weeks ago. It's clean now. It's safe to touch it now. It's not dirty anymore. No, it was dirty once, it'll always be dirty to me. Okay. So this is the problem sometimes with reviewers, is there's too much human emotion that hurt my feelings, I'm mad at it, and nothing it can ever do will ever earn my forgiveness. Man, you gotta let that go. It's not healthy. All right, let's go back to HDMI input over here and see what the screen says. Configure RAID mode. Okay, setup is complete. This section provides information on the volume name, file system, RAID mode, type, and the disk array. Volume 1, ext4 file system, RAID 5 array using drives 1, 2, 3, and 4. Very good. What's next? Okay, so A couple of things. I'm going to go over to settings. It's the first thing I want to do. We can give this a name. We can give it a description. There's our serial number. Our clock automatically set to Arizona. How did it know that? NTP, that's for setting the date and time. Time format, year, month, date. Nope, we're in America. We use month, day, year. Drive sleep. We can turn drive sleep on. Where's the time though? LCD on, power recovery on. I don't want power recovery off. I want that off. If it powers off, I want it to stay off until I know the power's back on stable. Power schedule, we can turn it off and back on a regular basis. Web access timeout, that's fine. Oh, this supports Time Machine for Mac. That's cool. Recycle bin. Analytics opt-in. Do not share. Okay. Network. I don't think I need to change anything in the network. If you see IPv6, I would disable it because it can cause problems with finding the device on your network. You shouldn't need IPv6 on your internal LAN anyway. System diagnostics, restore to default, device maintenance. Oh, there's a hibernate or reboot, but there's no shutdown. Scan disk, format disk. ISO mounting. Oh, that's an interesting concept. Okay. Notifications. This is where you set up email alerts or SMS text alerts and when you want alerts. If you just want critical ones or warnings or just all. And then right here, firmware update. Is there an auto on this? There is. It's enabled. Update schedule is random. Oh, I don't like random. Let's do Sundays.
I had it set to 3 a.m.
Oh, it's set at noon. Yeah, I could see that could be a problem. So we'll set it to 3 a.m. That's when it's on and nobody will likely be using it. Check for updates. System shutdown, restore, and restart.
Last update, December 21st.
What's the matter?
The last update was December 21st.
Wednesday, December 21st. Oh, so Western Digital is still keeping this up to date. They have not abandoned it. Are prohibited when the following conditions are in progress. Disk formatting, disk resizing. So I can't do this yet. I have to wait until I'm done configuring it. All right, that's fine. And it's probably no update. It's probably, I don't know how often these updates came out.
Not very often.
Yeah, so it'll probably be a long time. That may be the last one we see for all we know. All right, so up here, cloud access. I'm not going to want to access any of this from the cloud. You can. I'm not going to. Look at here. There's still users on this even though I erased it. Isn't that interesting? I'm sure there's a way to erase that. That wouldn't be there on a new out-of-the-box build. So that's carried over from somewhere.
That's way expanded from what was available.
These are the apps, but this is nothing compared to Synology. But there's Dropbox, Elephant Drive, FTP downloads, an iTunes server, internal backups, GoodSync. Oh, GoodSync's really covering the bases. Good for them. Joomla, there's a Plex media server. That would be very common on these for home use. Remote backups, PHP, quick find storage, PHP my admin, TV media, device drivers, transmission, Twonky server, WordPress, virtual here, and USB backups. I'm not really interested in any of that. Did you use any of these?
No.
No. Then we look at shares. Well, I haven't created anything yet, but it is defaulted to creating a public share automatically and a time machine. I don't want the time machine, so let's hit the minus folder, and that should delete that folder because I don't want it. When I set up a NAS, I have one folder. It's called public. That's it. Now, if you want to set up multiple folders and restrict them with passwords or user requirements, you can do that. Users. Okay, so I should be able to remove users here same way. Hit the minus. Sure you want to delete the user? Yes. And I want to delete that user. Yes.
Gee, thanks.
You're gone. All right, so now admin. That was you all along. And let's change this description as well. We'll get that out of here. And can I leave it blank? There, it solves that problem. And then password, we can change the password there. And then there are groups. We can manage groups of people like accounting and give them access to, say, payroll that nobody else can have access to. So you could use this in a business. I wouldn't, though, because it's kind of limited to, it's really a real basic, simple, even for business, it's a little too simple for my preferences. So here we've got 11.7 terabytes free. That's out of 12. Again, that's the math we talked about. And then one spare 4 terabyte drive is essentially there for parity. So it's a total of 16 terabytes of storage. Okay, so what's this thing called again? Let's go back over to storage. Volume virtualization. Oh, I don't want to do that. Disk status. Everything is good and healthy. Good running temperatures. Those are good temps. Let's see. We'll go over to network. Let's go. Okay, it's already on with the work group. Oh, it supports SMB 1, 2, and 3. That's awesome because Windows 10 ended support for SMB 1. You'd have to turn it back on, and doing so would open you up to a massive amount of exploits where your identity could easily be stolen. I have seen people just think they're outsmarting the system and turning SMB back on.
I had to for an old printer.
Yeah, but you know how to put security in.
And then put it back. But
I've seen people enable SMB1 and go, there, I fixed it. And what they just did is they just opened a big door for hackers to come in.
Right.
And they're completely oblivious to it.
Right.
So older devices that require SMB1, like that old Seagate Black Armor NAS, it won't work anymore. It won't find it unless you manually enable SMB1. And then the cost of doing that is your security. Your antivirus isn't going to protect you there. You're going right around it. Share aggregation. Oh, I guess that's if you hook up a couple of network cables, right? Because it's got 2 ports. You could aggregate if your switch or router supports that. Active Directory I don't use.
LDAP.
Huh?
LDAP.
LLTD? What's that? I can't read it. Hold on, let me make it huge. I gotta go to the right. This way. Let's go up here. Where'd it go? Enable or disable the link layer topology discovery protocol for enhanced network discovery. Well, I want that on, don't I? I want to be able to find it. So now here's the question. Can I find this?
Active Directory means it supports lightweight.
I don't want Active Directory. I wanted LLTD.
That's why you can use it in a business.
I understand, but it wouldn't be preferred for me personally. I find it's too basic, it's too simple, and its emphasis seems to be on home user. Its emphasis seems to be on pictures, movies, and music sharing. We don't do any of that in any of the companies because, they don't want to get fined or pay for all the licensing. Home users don't care. They skip past all the licensing, and for the most part, there's really no enforcement of it. And with streaming services today, I don't know why you'd go through all the trouble anyway. But again, it's a carryover from years before. That will fade out with the next generation. They likely won't be very common for younger people to do that. All right, so let's see if I can find this thing. I'm going to just click on the yellow folder here, click on network. So there's the EX4100 right there. Now you'll see there's 2 of them. This one here is the device itself. That should take us to the login page if we double click it. This one that looks like a little screen, that should be the actual share. If I double click on this, there's the public folder. I double click, and look, it's defaulted to these folders. See, Synology wouldn't do this. You would have to make these. The fact that it's assuming you want to share music, pictures, and videos just emphasizes the assumption that this is being used in a house, not in a business. So I would just highlight these and get rid of them because my clients would absolutely have a fit. Well, the boss would, because then their employees would start using it. Oh, I can put pictures here? I can put my music in here? No, you cannot. When it's yours at your house, you do whatever you want. Here at the business, you're eating up server space and backup time is taking longer because of your selfishness and in some cases violating the law. So we don't permit this in any size business. Not one employee running a real estate office out of their back room of their house is that not allowed. Okay, if they insist on doing it, I won't be their computer tech because I don't want to be dragged in if something happens. So that's it. That's how I would normally set this up. Now, if we want to, we can map a network drive to it so we don't have to find it through the network. We could just go to, let's just close this. We'll go to this PC. How did I do this before on Windows 11? First of all, this one we don't have hooked up, so I can right click and choose disconnect. Now, it's going to try and reach out for it, and then it times out because it can't find it. We'll disconnect it. Now it's gone. And then what did I do before? I right clicked. Yeah, map network drive. We'll reuse drive letter Z, and we can hit browse. There's the EX4100. There's the public folder. Click OK, and make sure reconnect it, sign in, or whenever restart the computer. So it's going to reconnect the Z drive. It opens it to show us that it works. So now I have drive C. Oops, let's close that. I have drive C and I have drive Z. Why did I go to the opposite end of the alphabet? That's so if I plug in USB drives or memory card readers, they're going to go D, E, F, G, H, I, and I can keep plugging them in before I ever run into a drive letter conflict, which really is frustrating when you have two drives that are the same letter. What a pain. So we just go all the way to the end. So W, X, Y, Z is all fine. Now it does show us, just like any other drive that's installed locally, how much space is in use and how much space we have available. The difference is that this is now on the network. So any computer or phone or tablet or laptop that's on this local area network has access to all the files on that drive. It's a great way to work together on something. It's a great way to move from room to room. So let's say I make a video here in Studio B, but I want to edit it in another room in Studio B. Before I would have to copy the file onto a flash drive and use the sneaker net to walk it over to the computer and copy it back. Now I just copy the file onto the Z drive, go to the other editing computer, pull it from the Z drive so I have it locally, edit it, render it, and then put it back on the Z drive as a rendered final output. And then I can upload it back here in the Studio B computer, and I don't have to copy it to the local computer. I can just upload to YouTube straight from the NAS. It's really, really convenient. Then if I want to turn the MyCloud on, I could go to Studio A and pull the same files, but these are large files and they'll be limited in their transmission speed based on how slow the internet is here. So I might as well just copy it on a flash drive, put it in my pocket, and drive it over to Studio A. So, these are the limitations, realistically, how you would use this. So overall, for 2015, this is very easy. I like this. I'm still puzzled on how your usernames were still stuck in there, because we've reset it and I completely factory reset all the drives. So where was that? I'm a little bothered by that, honestly. That means if you're going to get rid of one of these, if you want to retire one of these drives, what's that?
It's in ROM.
Well, it's not in ROM. No, ROM, you can't change ROM. You can't change ROM. It's in NAND.
Read-only memory. Once you set it up,
it's not, no. Now, if you can remove it, it's not read-only if you can remove it.
My user accounts were still there.
Yes, but I took them out. So clearly that's read-only, you wouldn't be able to take them out. Once read-only is set, you can never change it. It's NAND, N-A-N-D. It's the same thing flash drives use. But here's the thing. The important thing isn't the semantics argument. The important thing is that you're aware that if you want to retire one of these and you want to give it to somebody or sell it, it's not enough to reset it. So what I did is I took the drives out and I did the drive reset using diskpart in the clean command, which I've got a video. It's very easy. And it completely wipes the drives, but they're not securely erased. So for most cases, that's good enough. But if you really, really find the data is very critical, you really can't rely on a secure erase. Take the drives out and keep them and physically destroy them if it's that important. Or take each drive out and run it on a secure erase platform like Redkey or Derek's Boot and Nuke, and let it run for 8 hours or 10 hours per drive until they're all securely erased. So that'll take about 40 hours for you to do that, and tie up a computer while you're doing it. Or you can buy a drive erasure device for a couple $100 and do it that way, one drive at a time. What I'm getting at is secure erasing is extraordinarily time consuming, and it isn't necessarily guaranteed. So if it doesn't work, if somehow somebody's able to extract data and the data is that important to you, destroy the drives. Then you think, okay, well, without the drives, my logins are gone, my passwords are gone. They're not. That's what we've learned here. By hitting the reset button in the back, we have reset the administrator login password only. So this drive has this device has NAND memory in it. That's the kind of memory solid state drives use, that when you turn power off, it still stores your data on chips. A hard drive does that on a physical magnetic media platter. But when we talk about electronic chips, like RAM, all of that RAM gets erased every time you turn your computer off. That's why Windows has to load every single time. The computer has no idea it's ever loaded before. It's like it's starting for the first time every single time. So RAM is volatile. You lose power, you lost everything in your RAM. That's why you want to save your projects regularly in case of a blue screen or an unexpected power loss. You're writing a book like Stephen King and you're in chapter 6 and you haven't saved in 2 hours. And the power goes out, you've lost it all because it was all just sitting in RAM. Now these days, word processors have autosave features and you can adjust how often you want them to autosave. However, there is probably a reset device in here. And I would imagine if I had turned this on and played with it, because I wanted to keep this experience as genuine and as real, get real reactions and real misunderstandings of the interface. If I had thought that this was even possible, for the sake of just trying to have a true out of the box experience, I mean, there's no important information was exposed there, who cares? But what I'm saying is to just replicate this is what it would be like setting it up new. For a number of reasons, it wasn't, because of the save password and save usernames from the user that had it. So what I'm curious about now is if we go back, let me go back to the Nook over here. And let's log back into the NAS. So again, a shortcut to that would be just look on the network now that we've got it set up, double click down here, open it in Microsoft Edge. There's our login. Oh good, we didn't have to log in again. We go to settings. It's usually under settings, under some advanced or administrator type settings. Nothing's working. There we go. And firmware update, is it under utilities maybe? Restore to default. This is what if you were gonna retire this and give it away or sell it, you would want to do a full restore, which sounds weird, but the restore is to default. So in other words, it's a reset. This is just bad engineering language. What are you showing me? Firmware update. Oh, you want me to check it again? Now that we've set everything up? Check for updates. Still not letting us do it. I don't know why. Apparently, is there some disk formatting or resizing going on in the background? What does the screen say in the front? Does it say we're doing something? Is it still processing our array or our volume?
Yeah, it says volume 1 is formatted.
Huh, so here's the thing. If you were going to retire this, the first thing you want to do is erase all the data off of the drives. I don't see a secure erase option here, which is disturbing.
There's also no shutdown.
There's no shutdown option. We can only reboot or hibernate. Mm-hmm. Let's hit reboot. Are prohibited. That doesn't make any sense. I don't know, what is it doing? Okay, this is bothering me. It's telling me it's doing something, but it won't tell me what it is. So either it's stuck, CPU activity and RAM activity, it's doing something. Look at that, we're 54% CPU activity. Let's go under storage. What does it tell us about? That's USB, some notification, user accounts, shares, apps. It should still be under settings. Why isn't settings coming up? weird. CPU level went down there for a minute. Settings, not working. Refresh. Settings. It's a little slow. I think it's doing something in the background. Reboot. Well, let me reboot. Scan, format. So there's a format. So the best you could do would be to format all the volumes. Like here we just do volume 1, we only have 1 volume. Again, that's not a secure erase. It is doing something. So where's the status of our shares? Managing. Wow, that's just brought up a website with documentation. That's not good. That's not helpful for me right now. Device says it's good. Diagnostics, nothing. It's almost like it's so busy doing something in the background, it's really slow to start filling in these screens, and I don't know what it's doing. With Synology, I wouldn't have this problem. I could see. It's definitely not going to be a users thing or a shares thing. So here's what I'm going to do. Let's close that. Let's go back over to camera 1. Sometimes when I'm configuring a new device, these devices they either could be working on something in the background or they could be confused. Volume 1 is formatted. Sometimes you have to acknowledge the message on the screen, and until you do, the machine won't move forward. What I can do though, first of all, look at the lights. These lights should be solid. They shouldn't be blinking unless there's a read or a write activity happening. So it is in fact doing something, but it won't tell us. I've already scrolled all the way through the menu. I get an IP address. I get version and temperature, fan speed, drive status is healthy. What does that say? Capacity. Volume 1 is formatted. That's it. And yet it is doing something. These lights should be solid when the drive is idle. So the fact that it's not letting me reboot it suggests to me that there's still some parity checking, but it's just not telling us, and that bothers me. Synology will give you an update, and you can check it anytime you want, and it'll tell you it's going to take, with 4 20 terabyte drives, it took about 4 days of this on a Synology. 3 to 4 days of solid just. And it was background checking, so you still use it as normal. And then I could tell when it was done because after the 4th day, the lights just went steady. And then they went to sleep and they went out. And I knew without having to log into it, the verification's done. If the verification had failed, likely I would have gotten a red light somewhere on the unit. But regardless of that, this is in fact doing something. Because what I was about to do was I was going to hold the power button in and force it off. What you can do, hold the power button in on any laptop, desktop, if it's not responding. And you might have to hold it in for up to 10 seconds, so we'll try that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And this defies that rule that's almost universal. It will not power down. What's the point of a button if it doesn't do anything?
I've never had that problem.
So what I think is happening, and again, I'm only left now to my imagination because Western Digital isn't telling me what's happening, but I don't believe it verified that parity that quickly. I think it's still verifying parity, and I think this will likely take about 10 to 20 hours before it's complete. So that's okay, you still use the device as you normally would. What I'm trying to do now would not be considered normal or expected. You know, who's going to set it up and then turn it off? I just was making a video. I don't need it anymore. But I would feel a lot better if this would complete or give me a percentage up here of when it's going to, which it already did, by the way. It did tell us initially, but there's some deeper check that's happening and it doesn't want me to interrupt it. It's thinking, I guess, that if I interrupt it, I could corrupt the entire array. But I don't have anything on it, so what do I care? I'm going to reach back here. I'm going to pull the power. How dare it defy me? I'm in charge. If I tell it to turn off, it's going to turn off. Now, did I just corrupt the entire array? It's a roll of the dice, my friends. In all likelihood, it'll probably be fine, and it'll probably just pick up going back to wherever it left off to finish when it started. We'll see what happens. It's going to reboot again, unless it had a logic error and it was locked up. But it wasn't fully locked up, which seems unlikely to me. But it's possible, and if that's going to happen, it will happen during the configuration phase. And if it's going to happen, it'll happen to an older device, much more likely than a newer device. Terry Hughes says, Synology has a scrubbing process. Perhaps this is the same thing. Well, but there's nothing to scrub at this point. It's a brand new array. So apart from the parity check, but that's the thing. We can use our imagination. It's quite possible, even though it doesn't make any sense. Maybe that's what it was doing, but it wasn't telling us, and it wasn't allowing us to interrupt it. Joe says, that's one of the reasons I'm not a fan of RAIDs. Well, the thing about a redundant array of independent disks or a RAID is the redundancy that it has with regards to data integrity and how it applies to a business. If you're not running a business, then you're just a hobbyist and you would just do this for fun or because you enjoy technology. Nobody in business would say, this is why I'm not a fan of RAID, because you'd likely be out of business if that's the attitude you had. Only home users have the freedom to utilize a methodology of logic that applies to their own personal feelings and not to actual problem solving. Most home users that have these, if this died and they lost everything on it, it wouldn't be a big deal. It's mostly movies and music they've downloaded illegally anyway. From what I've experienced, I get calls from people. They say, I can't get my Plex Media Center to play on my television. I go, what are you playing on your Plex Media server? And they start naming movies. But you can't do that. Let me rephrase. You can do whatever you want. I can't get involved in that. I can't associate my professional business with an illegal activity. You have fun with that. And I'm not going to argue it any further. It's not what I do. You go ask your friend to help you with that. Your friend who has no legal liabilities. I don't care. Not the law. It's not my job to enforce it. But let me tell you the difference between talking to a customer who's pissed off because they can't watch Days of Our Lives versus talking to a customer who's pissed off because they got 12 employees on the clock that can't get any work done, and all their customers are being told to call back later, and their money is going down the drain like this, and you need to get over here and fix this now. It's a very different perspective when you're on this side. And I can assure you, when you're on this side, you cannot succeed without RAID. Or if you are, you're working way harder. So obviously, things that apply to businesses do not apply to individuals. Most individuals will do that because they want to, not because they have to. So just be aware of that. This is not something most people have in their home or even know what this is. But yet, nearly any business in existence knows what this is. There's a reason for that. All right, so we're back to the drives dancing around like crazy on this thing. Let me see what the front of it says. Let's see what the LCD says. Welcome to Western Digital My Cloud. Well, it hasn't booted. The power light's still flashing. It's still booting. So these universally do take a couple of minutes to boot. They're not instantaneous on-off, and they're not going to boot as fast as a desktop Windows computer. There's no 13-second boot time here. You're looking at around 90 seconds up to 3 minutes, depending on the unit, the size of the drives, and the age of the unit. So that's just normal across the board. These are not normally powered off or power cycled. These are meant to stay on and to be reliable for weeks, months, years. You'll even notice pretty much on every menuing system of any NAS, it shows you your uptime. And it's not uncommon for that uptime to represent thousands of days. which divided by 365 implies it has been running without a reset, without a power cycle for over 3 years. It's very common. Sometimes there's a power outage from a storm. It's not the NAS's fault that your uptime, got reset back to 0 again. I mean, apart from a battery backup, but even that's only going to save you for a certain amount of time. And if the power's out beyond that, it's going to shut down. So you will lose your uptime. I was very curious back in the day to see which of my clients would have the most uptime. And I'll tell you, we got into the thousands of days of uptime. Yeah, upwards of 3+ years without a reboot. Sarge Tech says, to most people at home, RAID means roach and insect spray. We need that in businesses too, especially the restaurants. RAID? Danielle wants to know, what does the log show? Does this thing do logs? We'll have to log in and check the logs. Captain's log, start date 12. All right, let's see now. Is this thing booted up yet? I hear it chattering like crazy. I think it's still booting. Yeah, it is still booting. The light is still blinking. Wow, it's a long boot time on this thing. Hey, 2015 though, and you never have to reboot. So it's not like it's a major inconvenience you encounter time and time again. And I did an improper shutdown, so it might be doing more than just booting. It might be doing some cross-checking. I hope it does. Okay, the chattering shut down, so no, light is still blinking. Can you guys see it? I'm looking at this light right here. That's the one I want to see go steady. When that one goes steady, the NAS is ready. These individually show what each drive is either reading or writing data. And since they all read and write data as a team, all 4 drives share that responsibility. One piece of data is written across all 4 drives. So we shouldn't see one drive light blink and the others not, because that means they're no longer working as a team. At least in a RAID array, a RAID 5 array. Samuel wants to know, did I just break it? Well, in the sense of how you spelled the word break, I did not. Yes, I stopped it and I've restarted it. So break is the correct spelling. But if you're suggesting that I've damaged it, then we would have to move the E and the K, switch those around and put the A one over and then be it. I'm just messing with you. Let's see. Lawn Dog says, if you use a UPS battery backup supply, when the battery goes low because of power failure, what software could be used to shut down this NAS? That will be built into the NAS. So the NAS will have compatible UPSs, typically APCs, very common. And when you plug the USB cable from the APC battery backup, this will recognize it. Am I wrong? That's how Synology works.
This one will not.
It doesn't recognize a NAS?
No, the UPS plugging into
I mean,
UPS.
My bad. When you plug a UPS into this, it doesn't know? Are you sure?
Possibly.
Let me do a Google search, because most of them have a limited number of see, I'm mixing up all my 3-letter acronyms.
It recognizes
Uninterruptible power supply. It recognizes loss of power, but it doesn't know it's on a battery.
Correct.
So how does it know when the battery is running low and to shut itself off before damage occurs?
The battery in the UPS, it
Yeah.
doesn't track that.
Well, that's what the USB cables are for here. I'm sure of it. Okay, it's time for me to do a Google search. So wrong keyboard. EX4100. Let's Google this. EX4100 UPS compatibility. UPS control, Western Digital Community discussion. I looked but couldn't find much, so I thought I'd ask. I have an EX4100 on a UPS and would like to know if I can have the EX4100 automatically shut down when the UPS reaches a certain battery level. My UPS is not on the network, so I'd like to have it be attached via USB. I have an older APC smart UPS. Hold on, I can share the screen with everybody. I'll let them read along with me. I looked around, could not find much, blah, blah, blah. I wanted to shut down. I have an older...
2015, that was...
Well, he's got a DB9 serial port. That's not going to work. It's got to be USB. Yeah. We could refer to this keyboard, I'm sorry, this knowledge base article. Not sure why I never found that. Okay, what does it say? Let's click it. UPS config. You run the UPS via USB to the NAS. Yes. When the UPS is connected and seen by the MyCloud, the UPS can be seen in the dashboard. That's how it's supposed to work. Master mode will be displayed under settings, network UPS. Why are you shaking your head? No, it says it works.
For the 4100 back in 2015.
Oh, well, it's been updated since then, but sure, that's why the USB ports are there. Well, you know what? Why don't we test this in real life and see what happens? Let's go back to camera 1. Is this thing even booted yet? Or am I still getting a flashing power light? Power light's steady, but it's still doing something. All right, let me grab a UPS and let's see what happens here. Oh God, this thing weighs almost as much as me. Okay. Okay, so here we've got a UPS. And I need a break. And then I need a USB cable. Let's find a USB cable. Come on, Carey. You got HDMI cables, you got power cables, you got network cables. You know what I don't have? Oh. Okay. This is a CyberPower UPS because I like them better than APC. And they come with a little documentation and they come with a USB cable. Ooh. That is exercise, let me tell you. Let's plug it in and see what happens. It should auto-recognize it. We don't use any software from the UPS manufacturer. You would on a Windows computer. Synology will auto-detect, and this should auto-detect. But there may be brands, you know, less popular brands of UPS. They don't know what they are, and then they won't be able to communicate. So if you stick with a big brand like CyberPower should work, and APC should definitely be the gold standard for this. All right, so we'll plug in one end over here in that USB port. We'll come around. We'll plug in another USB port right up here. What's the problem? Got to put it in the right way, Carey. Now, I should probably plug this in, but maybe the battery's got to charge. That battery's dead. That's dead. It's been sitting around here a long time. I'm not surprised. I was hoping to be impressed, but that'll teach me to be hopeful. All right, let's go around here and let's find a plug somewhere. That ought to do right there. And in this thing, we should be able to turn it on. Hello. Okay, got 120 volts. That turns it off. So let's turn it on. Okay, that's on. And let's log into the Western Digital EX4100. Full screen for Carey. And let's go to, let's see, I cannot remember the IP address, so we'll just go to network, find it down here, double clicky, log in. Oh, Hey, that's already acting faster. Make sure the video's still going on. I hit the wrong button. On the wrong keyboard. Okay, we're fine. Hang in there, guys. I'm just setting up things over here. So it said to go to cloud access. I'll tell you what, I'm really positioning my keyboards and mice in the wrong place. Cloud access. It said it was in cloud access. Apps. Do we have any UPS apps? I don't recall seeing one. Don't give up yet. Settings. I would have put it in settings if it were me. This is probably telling me it's still doing something, right? Yeah, it's still doing whatever it's doing. It won't tell us. Utilities, system diags, system logs, view logs. System is rebooted from a power failure. Scan disk on volume 1 is completed. Yeah, it's not telling me it's doing anything. That's our system log. That's all there is. Oh wait, there's a lot more. Firmware update. Oh no, that's not a firmware. It's just a firmware check. That's when we did the reset with the little pin I stuck in. Yeah, it's not telling us it's doing anything at all. These logs are completely useless. This is why I don't like logs. I find them to be totally a waste of time. So it wasn't under general, right? Primary server, energy saver. You'd think it'd be somewhere in here. Mac backups, recycle bin, and analytics. Certainly not a network thing. IPv6 is off. Good. Oh, there's a network UPS. Wonder how that works. I guess that's when you're connecting these NASs together, but we only have one. Remote backup server. So we do have a UPS option in here. You can configure the system to be responsible for communicating UPS status to the other devices. So we only have one device. So that's what I thought. Then under utilities, system diags, restore to default, configuration, device maintenance, scan, format, ISO. All right, don't want that. The firmware update is just firmware update. So it did tell us to go into cloud access. Setting up cloud access. All right, so you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pull up that same thing. How to add UPS to WD EX4100. Somehow it's about updating the firmware. So that's probably why you didn't see it in 2015, because it's been apparently added in a firmware update. And that's our same page we had before. This is the knowledge base article here. This shows you how you can connect them on a network. The MyCloud master must be connected. Setting up UPS master and slave.
Scroll ahead. Right there. Select the USB icon.
Oh, it's up in the USB icon. Duh. Yeah, way up here. I'm sitting here, I'm focused on this menu here, but this is a USB device. It says battery is charged at 100%. Well, I know that's not true. That battery is bad. So it automatically sees it. I'm clicking it. It's not doing anything. That's what I've been doing. Oh, wait, here we go. Manufacturer is CyberPower. Battery is at a 100% charge and it's online. All right, now, you want to see something funny? I'm going to unplug power from this because that battery is bad. That's why it's here. It's here for a battery replacement. Watch what happens when I pull the power this time. No, wait. How's it going to get power? It's not going to, because I have this plugged. I don't have it plugged in the back of the UPS.
Reporting the UPS.
Right, but you have to plug the NAS into the UPS.
Yes.
Durr. Okay. Which means I'm going to do an improper shutdown again. All right, folks, for UPS to work, we have to have two plugs. One, we have to plug the device we want to be on battery power into the battery. And two, we need a USB cable to communicate to the device that you've lost power. Your battery power is going down. If power has not been restored before the battery power reaches a certain percentage, I want you to cycle down properly so you don't have an improper shutdown. That's why the USB cable is so important. So let me go back to camera one, because I was about to test this and I was like, wait a minute, I haven't plugged into the back. Now the back of the UPS has just surge protection or surge and battery. One row of plugs back here on one side is surge only, no battery protection. And the other side is surge and battery. So just plugging it in without paying attention to where you're plugging it in at, you may not be getting the battery protection offered by this. I know for a fact that battery is not at 100%. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this plug, which is this one right here. I'm going to unplug it. We're going to come around and we're going to plug it into the battery side. So it's going to get regular power. So my right is all surge protection only, and my left is surge and battery protection. So we'll just go right up here to the top one. And I remember I set this to not automatically turn on because I don't want power fluctuations to damage it. So I have to manually turn it on. And I do that on purpose because it's the power fluctuations. When the power kicks on and it immediately kicks off again, that happens all the time out here in Phoenix. It's like you get this brownout where it has trouble starting. And that's the thing that'll kill your equipment. It doesn't happen every time. It only has to happen once. Now, we're rebooting one more time. This may take a while. And then we'll find out if it's able to be intelligent enough to say, I'm going to shut off. I will say this is a damaged UPS. The batteries in these UPSs go out like a car battery, about 4 or 5 years. So I put a date on these when I put them into my customers' locations, because I can't remember when we put them in. I get a label maker. I don't put the exact date. I just need the month and the year. It's close enough. From time to time, I'm working there. I take a glance and I look at what the date is. And when we're at 4 or 5 years, typically when we're at 4 years, I alert the customer, we should plan to either replace the UPSs or replace the batteries. Replacing the batteries is a hassle because you have to dispose of the old batteries. You have to dispose of the old batteries anyway. It is illegal to put them in the garbage. People do it. You're not very thoughtful for future generations if you do that. You're supposed to take them to a battery recycling center. Now, because there's nothing wrong with the UPS itself, we can go to Amazon, we can take these batteries out, look at the numbers on them. They're big, heavy lead-acid batteries. Lead-acid batteries like to be charged all the time. They're not like the batteries in cell phones. These batteries deplete quickly, and they like to have electricity and be charged up all the time, just like a car battery. They're heavy. They have typically they have a liquid inside of them, what's it called? Boy, my electronics. It's been such a long time since it's like an electrolyte that's in there, and it. Anyway, so not like Gatorade electrolyte. So you have a lead-acid battery. This one probably has 2 because it's a higher wattage. And you go on Amazon and you can find them, but a lot of times what people are going to buy are the no-name brands coming from Asia. We don't really know that those batteries are going to last as long. We don't know that those batteries aren't going to suddenly catch fire. We don't know that that's matching the quality. If you can get batteries made in Japan, they're generally better made, but they're far more expensive. And because they're heavy, they're expensive to ship. So I usually just tell clients, let's just order new UPSs because they use smaller batteries to output the same amount of power in a lighter unit that's more compact. and then I'll take your old unit and recycle it or e-cycle it. So that's what this customer has done. We've retired it. I've taken it, so to rid them of the responsibility of proper disposal, I will go and I will order batteries on Amazon, and I will order cheap ones that have good reviews, and then I will hand this off to a friend like Mitch Morrison and say, use this and let me know when it fails on you so I can gauge if those cheap batteries are decent or horrible, maybe even better than the originals. Anything's possible. Before I will do that to any customers, I'll say, hey, you want a free UPS? All you have to do is let me know when there's problems with it. Now, here's the tricky part. I will say to the people I give these to, I'll call them and say, remember the date we put on that? Because they get a date. It'll say battery is replaced, and it'll have the month and the year. Has it been a year? Yes, it has. Okay, what I want you to do is unplug the UPS from the wall and see if the devices attached to it stay on and for how long. Get a little, I don't need the exact minutes and seconds, but take a look at the clock, pull power to simulate a power loss, and see how long your devices that are plugged into it stay on before they shut off. Tell me how many minutes you get out of it. It's the only way you know if they're bad in most cases. The second way you know if they're bad is I get called and they'll say, hey, Carey, my computer's just randomly turning off, or my NAS just shut down for no apparent reason. That's because the batteries are dying. And that'll typically happen after 5 or 6 years. So people sit there and they have these in their homes 10 years. And it says 100% charge, everything's great. I never had to replace a battery. Simulate unplugging it, how many seconds of charge you have left in that battery. In all likelihood, you have less than 10 seconds from a full charge to a zero charge on a battery older than 5 or 6 years. You don't realize it. The device isn't smart enough to load test it. So until you load test it, you really don't know that that battery is protecting you at all. 15 seconds isn't enough time. So ignorance is bliss. People say, well, it's not giving me any error. It's not causing any problems, but it's also not helping you. It's providing surge protection, I suppose. But what I see happen is I see the clients end up getting weird computer reboots and crashing caused by the UPS. And when you think about the reason why they put the UPS in, wasn't it to prevent that? So you got to love the way a UPS works until it doesn't, and how it's oftentimes not even obvious when it's not working. Until you unplug the UPS from the wall to force it to run off the battery, and then see how long your device stays on. And if that's long enough for you, then you don't need to replace it. So if this large battery could power this little NAS for 10 hours, and now it's only going to power it for 2 hours, that's plenty of time. But if you've got a lot of devices plugged into this, your battery's going to drain quicker. You definitely don't want to plug any laser printers into this, or any lamps or lights. I would understand the necessity for a monitor. I wouldn't plug both monitors into it. I'd plug one monitor, the main monitor, into the battery side, and if you had a second monitor or a third monitor, into the surge side only. So when you lose power, it's going to be very obvious to you that your computer is running on batteries, and to wrap up whatever you're doing and shut it down yourself if you're there when it's happening. Otherwise, if you're not there when it's happening, this USB cable should tell the computer with software installed, which this has from the factory. Your Windows computer does not. Will tell it, actually Windows 11 might, but anyway, it tells the computer, hey, go ahead and do an auto shutdown, close out all the files, don't leave anything open. I'm about to run out of power. Laptops do the same thing. Your laptop says, hey, you only have 10% battery, plug me in. It's kind of like that. So let's see, is this thing booted up yet? Let me step around. Power lights flash. This has a long boot up time. Okay. But again, how often would you reboot it? Find me in Hawaii with a $5 super chat. Hey, thank you. Find me in Hawaii. Aloha. Mahalo. That's all I know. Craig Casabona with a $20 super chat earlier. Thank you, Craig. What about, so Photo Mix Media joins us. I haven't seen Photo Mix Media in a while. It's starting to show up again. What about the individual you told us that had a particular movies you help out? You help that individual out. Well, let's talk about business and let's talk about personal life. I don't mix these two things together. What somebody does with, so let's say a friend of mine calls me and they've got a problem. They're not hiring me. They're not paying me. I'm not officially there as a work call. That's entirely different. However, this is not something I want to do. I'm not making any money from it. There's nothing that benefits me personally. In other words, if I'm able to help somebody do something that is effectively being an accomplice in an illegal activity, and I'm doing that personally, there's a less financial liability to me and my personal assets than to my business, which could end up losing my business, and then I don't have a job and I don't have any income, and then I won't have a home. And that's just talking about lawsuits. We're not even talking about, criminal penalties. We're just talking civil penalties here. So officially, nobody in their right mind running a legitimate business would advocate for or promote any piracy whatsoever. Now, what those people do after hours is their business and their liability. But what you do during business hours, that's putting your business on the line. And is it worth losing your business, whatever amount of revenue you generate, because you want to earn money by helping customers do illegal things online? I can assure you, you will not be in business very long. So, and this is why I make my YouTube videos, because the vast majority of YouTube content in this tech arena is made by enthusiasts that have no such liabilities. They are free to talk about whatever they want to talk about, and they have nothing to lose. Now, when you get into these large media companies that are doing tech videos, you will find that their attitude, once they reach a certain amount of profit, and once their losses could result in not only financial devastation for themselves, but the loss of all their employees means to earn a living, this isn't worth the risk. But they might still go home on their own time and use BitTorrent to download the latest movie. That's none of anybody's business, and that's their own individual liability. If they're caught and if they're held liable for that, it doesn't affect their business. It only affects them personally. So one of the things that bothers me is that people don't seem to understand the difference. People overall have a massive ignorance of what the business liabilities are because they've never run a business before. And if they ran a business like that, and some have, they go out of business for a number of reasons. So if you notice a hypocrisy, it's because you don't understand. We're not talking about comparing apples to apples. We're talking about what somebody does in their personal life versus what somebody does in their public life. If you notice, anytime you see a celebrity on an interview show, there's questions already pre-set up, and they have something called a handler. And the handler ensures that their client doesn't make a fool of themselves or become a PR nightmare. But when that person is away from their handler and they're at some party with some friends doing drugs, there's no press around. So they can sit there and be one way on TV and be another way in their personal life. But when their personal life becomes public, they could lose their career. So the best course of action, if you're in public or running a public business, is to not engage in it at all. At all. So that being said, as far as any official work that I do that I get paid for, I will not engage in my business in any illegal activity. Period. It's not up for discussion. So I do feel like what you do, Photo Mix Media, you particular, is you try to find ways to embarrass and challenge me. And I hope I'm not interpreting your actions as being aggressive, but rather as genuine curiosity. Because if you're trying to demonize me in front of my audience, I don't appreciate it. So I would hope that that is not your intention. I have no problem explaining and anything that you don't understand, but the fact that you would maybe take something you don't understand and apply it as evil or as double talk to demonize me is definitely nothing I've done to you to deserve. I don't do that to you. So I don't appreciate having it done to me or anybody else doing that. If there is a question you have because you are concerned, I'm happy to address that concern before you initiate any accusations. Okay? I'm an open book. I am transparent. I believe in honesty and integrity, and I believe that there's not enough of it in the world today, but all too often people are quick to judge without enough information, and they do so without clarifying the information. So my concern is that you've done this, the last 3 questions you've asked, you've dug in a way that implies you are looking for something evil. I don't like that. I don't deserve that. And I don't think you'd like it if somebody did it to you. But you see, I answered your question. I could have just banned you, right? Just not even dealt with it. I want you to appreciate I've taken the time in front of all the entire audience to address you, because if there's anybody else that wants to do that, take it up with me privately. If you're trying to embarrass me or humiliate me live on my channel, what do you think I'm going to do? But I am more than happy to answer your question if it's a sincere question and it's not out, digging for some reason to hate me or to make me look bad. I can do that on my own. I don't need any help with that. All right, this should be booted by now. Let me just step around here and let's see, what do we got? Okay, this is solid now. Now this did say that the battery was at 100%, and I just realized I'm on a delay. My video's on a delay, so there's my live video. Okay, let me step back around. Okay, so supposedly this is at 100%. I know for a fact it's not, because it wouldn't even turn on a second ago. It would have turned on without being plugged in if the battery actually had a charge. I don't think this battery is holding anything at all, 0. But there's one way to find out, and that is you don't turn the UPS off, because that literally turns it off. What we do is we take the cable that the UPS is plugged into and we unplug it from the wall, and that simulates a power outage. And we have to make sure that anything that we're expecting to stay on is plugged into the back of the UPS. And then we would hope that there's enough battery life in here that it can communicate via the USB cable and tell this thing shut down properly. Now, I don't have any data on here, and I'm not going to physically damage the drives by doing this, not likely. What I am likely to do is corrupt data on it, but because it's a brand new array and there's nothing on it to lose, I don't care if it's corrupted. It doesn't matter. I'll just reset it again. I'm going to reset it again anyway. This is just for today's video. It's not going to stay this way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to step over to the plug here, and I'm going to find that big power cable. There it is. And I'm going to unplug the UPS, and that simulates we've lost power. Let's watch this when I do it. If anything, if the battery has any charge on it at all, this thing should start beeping at me like a smoke detector. Here we go. Look, power lost instantly. So that tells us these batteries are reporting their 100%. And I told my customer, I said, look, I know you don't have any complaints about this, but I'm telling you, based on the number of years you've had it, I think they had it 5 years, this needs to be replaced, or we need to change the batteries. Changing the batteries is a pain in the butt. The newer units are smaller. What do you want to do? They said, we'll order a new one. They ordered it on Amazon. I said, you let me know when it comes in. I'll set it up for you. They did. I said, do you want me to e-cycle your old unit? They said, yes, please get it out of here. We don't want to deal with it. And it's been sitting here waiting for me to open it up, see what batteries are in it, go on Amazon, order some new batteries. I already gave one of these to Mitch, and I don't know if those batteries, so far so good, right? But it hasn't been long enough. And the batteries for these are around $25 at the cheapest each. And because this is a 1500 watt, I think there's 2. There could be more than 2 in here. So this could cost me $50 to $100 for the batteries. The physical labor's not that bad. And then you got to plug it in and leave it in overnight and let these lead acid batteries that are replaced recharge. Put a new label on it with the month and year because I'll forget. I mean, there's a lot of these I got in the field, so I don't know which one went in where or when. But my point is that I did not know the status of this other than its age. This is the very first time I've ever tested it. I just assumed, okay, it's been 5 or 6 years. We're past due. Let's get it replaced before it becomes a problem. So I don't know how long it's been this way. This could be this way the last 2 years for all I know. And the customer is blissfully ignorant, thinking they're being protected. Now the surge protection's still working, but they're getting no battery protection at all because nobody's tested it. This customer isn't somebody that has me come out except when they have a problem. They're not very proactive. So I reached out to the customer because I have a database also that tells me when I installed for certain customers, and it came up and it says replace UPS for this company. It's on my Outlook calendar. And then when I replaced it, I set it like 4 years ahead and say replace UPS for this company. And then I forget about it until it pops up. And that's ultimately what ended up happening. So I reached out to the customer, I instigated, I said, it's time. I know you're not having any problems with it, but it's likely not working. And if it is working, it's probably not much battery life in it, even though it says 100%. They said, no problem, they're not expensive. You're right, I'd have to look up the receipt. I can't remember when we bought it, but it sounds right. Tell me what to order. I send them an Amazon link, they order it, they call me, it came in, I drive over there, I plug it in, I take the old one, everybody's happy, and the Outlook calendar has a new reminder in 4 or 5 years. That's how I do that. It's very simple. Then I will, when I have time, I'll take this apart. There's just 2 screws on these Cyber Powers right under here, and then the whole face kind of drops down and pulls away, and the batteries are right in there, typically stacked on each other with a positive and negative cable. Usually you need some pliers, and you want to use something with rubber grips so you don't shock yourself, and you pull the spade connectors off, slide the units out, take a look at what the model number is on the battery, type that into Amazon. You're going to have multiple selections at multiple prices. I look for a combination of low price and good reviews, and I order them. They usually don't arrive overnight. They're heavy. They usually go by a special shipper because people don't like to ship batteries. And then I take the old batteries, I put them in the boxes the new batteries came in, and I put them in the garage. And when I get about 10 of them, I load them into the car, I take them to the recycler, and I go, here, take these. In return, I have a UPS. Now, I don't need it. I don't have any use for it, but it's great for testing different manufacturers of batteries so that if and when a customer wants the option of replacing the batteries, I can make the determination and the offer to the customer of an accurate price quote. If a $25 battery is only going to last 12 or 18 months, I'm not going to recommend it. And if an $80 battery is, let's say, the original equipment, so I know what to expect from it, then we need 2 of them. We're almost at the price of just buying a whole new unit. But I don't really know that for sure. So it has to be done through testing and through time. And then we can establish which battery manufacturers, if any, are good alternatives to the original. But the originals are very expensive. So usually we just order new ones, get them installed, and we're done. Okay, does anybody have any final questions? We're going on 3 hours for this video. Again, I typically like to make my videos around 2 hours, but these are like classrooms, right? These are journeys and experiences. These aren't meant to be splashy product advertisements, which I think too many viewers are accustomed to. So I hope this is reminiscent of being in school where there's interaction from the students. My teachers in school made mistakes all the time. Chalk would break when they're writing. Sometimes they do a math problem wrong. I had one teacher, I'll never forget, I was 11 years old, I was in 6th grade. And he says, I'll tell you what, I'm going to give you 10 problems, and when you solve these 10 problems, you can go home early. And the teacher wrote down 0, then wrote the question, then the number 1, wrote the question, number 2. And one student in the class said, that's 11. And the teacher said, what are you talking about? The student, he's 11 years old. And nobody in the class noticed this, and I will never forget it because I felt like an idiot. The teacher was genuinely dumbfounded. He goes, it's 10. The student says you started at 0. So 0 is 1, 1 is 2, 2 is 3, and 10 is 11. The teacher literally was just in disbelief. The teacher took the chalk and tapped each line and counted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And he took the eraser and he says, you're right. We all would have done 11 questions before getting home early when we were told there was going to be 10. And I've never forgotten, 0 is always 1. We're not in the 22nd century. We're in the 21st century. Right? Wait a minute, let me think about that. We're not in, so the year is, we're not in the 20th century. We're in the 21st century, that's it. Because we started year 0 or year 1. So year 1 to year 99 was century 1. Year 100 to year 199 is century 2. So whatever the number is that it starts with, we're one number higher than that because we started at 0. It's amazing how you can go through life and never realize you might be paying more than you should, or you're doing more work. In this case, 11 years old, one student out of a classroom of like 28. Only
every price always ended 99.
Not at Costco. At Costco, the prices mean if the product is on sale or being discontinued. If it ends in 00, it means it's out of stock, and then when it's gone, if it ends in 97, you Google that. Costco has the price, the last few cents of the price indicate the product status at the store. If it's on sale, if it's discontinued, if it's the last stock remaining. They told me in Norway they use krona, and kronas are like $0.25. And that's their smallest. There's no 10 cents or 5 cents or 1 cent. So they said they do the same thing. They'll price something at 14.85 krona when you round it up, so it's 15 krona. You don't get to the 85. You either have 75 cents, let's say, or $1. And since your smallest denomination is 25 cents, is 1/4, then all you have to do is go where you're at the midpoint, where you round up. Somebody from Norway can confirm this. This is what I was told. And that's what they do. And so you pay the rounded up price. Because it looks cheaper. $14.99 looks cheaper than $15. Universal worldwide. It is a marketing technique that is very successful because it works. Glenn's Music said he's actually visiting from the 26th century and we're doing research on you people, but I can't say too much. Apparently his name is Duck Dodgers. So I just want to see if I missed any other questions or setups. Some people are setting me up here, so let me just see. It's like somebody asking me, if you found a wallet on the street, would you spend the money immediately or wait a week? How do you answer that? I wouldn't do either of those. So I'm back up in the chat to Craig Casabona's contribution. So I don't see any other questions. Gary Carbon with a $9.99 contribution. Thank you, Gary. Thanks for supporting the channel. Starshine says, I will confirm this in absence of any Norwegians. You owe me Norway. So Oystein was in here earlier from Norway. He could certainly confirm that. I think we're wrapped up. It's about 10 minutes away from 3 hours on the broadcast. Oh, there's Oystein. Oystein says, yes, I can confirm it. So give me an example of like what a price would be where it's actually it's rounded up. Because I don't know where there's a point where it's rounded down and there's a point where it's rounded up. And of course, it's always designed to round up. But you know, they have to exceed a certain percentage of the krona to round up to the next kroner. Kroner. Lawn Dog says, Carey, the same monetary power glitches happened here in the desert I live in also. Those 1/4 second to half second power goes on and off again are the absolute worst for computers. He has a backup power supply. Yes, yeah, and it'll kill your refrigerator, your air conditioner. I use a whole house surge protection. You can buy these. They go in the fuse panel, into the circuit breaker panel. And as the voltage that comes in from the utility goes into your house, the first thing it hits is this surge protector. They're like $100. And you can have an electrician put it in. I don't advise you to do it yourself unless you're an electrician. And then it feeds the rest of the circuit panel, of the circuit breaker, of the power panel. And what it'll do is if you get these power spikes, it protects everything on the electric circuits of your house and it gives its life. So it's got typically it's got like a green light on it. So when you open your power panel and you look in there, you'll see the green light on. And if the green light is ever red, you would never know unless you go and check it, because what it does is it gives its life to protect your equipment and then it lets power flow through it and with no more protection. So it's not like it gives its life and you've lost power to everything in your house, because what good is that? So you do have to check it from time to time. And if you notice the red light is on, there's no repairing it. You take it out and you replace it, and you just think, oh my gosh, this must have saved me some appliances like an air conditioner, refrigerator, washer, dryer, or any, like, big screen TV, anything plugged in. So do know that those are available for purchase. They're whole house surge protection. They have a name. Let me Google that real quick. I can give you a name. Yeah. GE whole house surge protection. And well, that looks exactly like the one I have. Let me share my screen with you so you can see them. Window capture. So this is what, Home Depot. So this goes in the breaker panel. There's a light right there. Green light equals protected. No light means replace the unit. It's given its life. How much are they? $89. And again, I would have a professional install it. It's some serious voltage coming in off the utility. It's not something I would toy with. And there are other options, as you can see up at the top. There's some other. This one looks like the same thing. I would stick with a name brand. I wouldn't screw around. I mean, I trust GE for this kind of stuff. I don't trust them for everything. But that, I believe, is the unit I have, and they've been around for many years, but few people know they exist. A lot of people surge protect their televisions and their computers, but not their refrigerators, not their air conditioner. It's about the only way you can do it. That one, oh, Siemens, they're a good company.
Yeah.
$133, it's probably a better one. Bolt Shield QSPD, 2-pole, single-phase, 3-wire, 65 kiloamp plug-in surge protection device. Green equals full protection, red equals no protection, so it's going to give its life. It says to replace it if there's a red light. And then usually you break out a couple of them. In a power panel, you'll have these little tabs that break out for adding circuit breakers, and this will take up like 2 slots, like a video card would take up 2 slots. You punch out, your electrician would punch out 2 of the spacers, and so you can see this, it just sits flat, just like a circuit breaker, and then the panel goes over it. So you just see this part, you know, this part that's raised up. You won't see any of this unless the face of the panel's been removed. There's a little video here. Don't need any music. Show it to us. See, they're going to knock out 2 of the plates. It's going to sit just like a circuit breaker in the panel. It's designed to fit in like one. And it's going to go in on the main feed. I'm guessing that's a ground. And you see how it sticks out like that? And then whenever you're looking in your panel, just make sure that green light is on and you're good to go. Peace of mind. That's all there is to it. But a lot of people simply don't know those exist. So there you go. The more you know. Read the reviews on them too. And there's more than GE and Siemens. There's other manufacturers. Maybe those cheap ones are okay. I don't know. Read the reviews. I wouldn't buy the cheap ones. I don't gamble with my stuff. I make a living with it. I don't want to put myself out of business trying to save money. That'd be kind of a dumb reason to go bankrupt, right? All right, guys, well, there you go. I'm glad that that comment came up because I've talked about that years ago, and it's been years since I've talked about it. And got a lot of viewers that weren't watching me years ago, so sometimes going back and reiterating some of this information is all brand new to many of you. Harold says the Siemens only works with Siemens panels. See, stuff like that I don't know. And that's important to know because there are different panels. So I believe that to be true. Sounds right to me. Harold says they are manufacturer specific. Unless you're an electrician, my goal here is to simply let you know what to ask your electrician for. If you have an electrician, call them up and say, hey, I heard about this whole home surge protection. What would it cost me to have you install one? That's what I did. I don't install them myself. I know my limits. I'm not playing around with 220 volts. The device gains access to the A and B phase of the panel power, and the white wire goes to the neutral, and the voltage spikes get sent to the neutral wire, and the tough part is neutral. Thank you, Lawn Dog. I appreciate that explanation. I still wouldn't recommend anybody do it themselves unless you are a professional electrician. It's serious stuff, and I don't want you to burn your house down or hurt yourself. And they can be panel specific. I believe that to be true, as I recall. And your electrician can tell you which compatible units will work with your panel and the pricing difference between them. They're not very expensive. It shouldn't take more than an hour of your electrician's time. It should take a lot less than an hour. It should take about 20 minutes. But they might bill you by the hour regardless. Joe says, luckily, I'm qualified for doing such work. Oh, I have no doubt there are qualified electricians in the chat. But I assume most of you are not, and this is not a DIY project. This is absolutely not advised to do it yourself. Just so you know. Glenn's Music said, don't mess with them, otherwise you'll truly find out the power is in your hands. Yeah, we don't want that to be literal. And thank you, Harold, for the information as well. Kelly Stewart says, check your phone. Oh, thank you again, Kelly, for the Amazon gift card. So speaking of power outages, Kelly's having a rough time of it. He's up there in Northern California. They've had fires. They've had big storms. As a result of these storms, he's lost power again. I was like, hey, Kelly, here's hoping 2023 won't be as challenging. And then first week of 2023, he's out of power. Some storm rolled in, and he's like, sending me a message just saying, hey, I just wanted you to know this happened. I don't know if you're getting my message. I got it. But I guess he's still using like cell phone signal. And last I heard, they were still waiting on the power to come on. Maybe now that he's in here, maybe that means, I mean, he went a couple days without power. Yeah, that's not good. Maybe that's just a hold-off remnant from 2022, and now that's out of the way. And maybe now, Kelly, everything going forward will be less challenging with nature and fires and you know, the weather and all the other stuff you've endured through last year. He certainly would be one of those people that would benefit from having a generator, and he would benefit from having whole house surge protection if he doesn't already. We don't get that very often, so it wouldn't make any sense. But if you live in a part of the country where that happens a couple times a year or more, it's very convenient to have your own power. Oystein said, if it had been 31.49 Norwegian kroner, then it would only cost 31, so it rounds down if you paid cash. What if you pay with a credit card? Does it actually charge the precise amount? Or is that only a limitation of cash because the smallest, like in America, they want to get rid of the penny. So when something costs 97 cents, it'll just be $1. But I guess if you charged it on a card, it would actually be 97 cents. Because they wouldn't be able to give you change if you gave them $1.
You usually have a credit card processing fees.
Well, that may be true too. It depends how much it is though. Isn't Norway in the European Union, and don't you use euros? I don't think Norway or Sweden uses euros, do they? Or maybe they use both. Any product that would be 31.5 Norwegian krona, you'd pay 32. So 49. So that suggests the krona is $0.50 and not 25 cents. I thought it was like a quarter, but maybe that's changed in time, or maybe I'm remembering it wrong. I appreciate the clarity, Oystein. It's good to know from somebody who lives there. Mats Olaf says, say hello to Camera Girl.
Hi.
Joe says, an $89 protection on a $10,000 investment. Exactly. You'd think this was more common. How many of you never heard of whole home house surge protection before? I bet most of you never even knew this existed. It's just, for whatever reason, it's not often talked about, but it's been around for 2 decades at least since I've known about it. It didn't exist before I didn't know about it. That's my point. Sweden uses SEK, the Swedish krona, instead of the euro, even if they're in the EU. Norway is not in the EU. Thank you again, Oystein, for the clarity. All right, we're a little after 3 hours on the broadcast. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you enjoyed our journey and exploration of this 7-year-old network-attached storage, the Western Digital EX4100, introduced and reviewed by many YouTube channels here 7 years ago, and despite being sold today, never reviewed as though it were a new product. Even though you can still buy them brand new, they're still made today. That's just weird, isn't it? It's not new anymore. Let's not talk about it. Now, Would I recommend it? It's a little pricey. I think you can do better with more power and more options with the Synology. I think it was a great deal in 2015. But if you have one, I don't see any reason to get rid of it. I don't necessarily see any reason to upgrade it. If it's meeting all of your needs, it's very reliable. This thing has been in service since 2015. It's been on nonstop 24/7 for 7 years. Storage capacity was running low. They thought, you know, for the cost of replacing the drives, I could just upgrade the NAS with a faster processor and a different operating system like Synology with all those apps and really use this for more than I'm using it. And that was the reason that it got retired. Now that it's retired, it's given me an opportunity to play with it and have some video content. And it's still relevant because it's still an option to consider buying today for whatever reason you might have. I would not buy one. I would have not bought one in 2015. I think Synology makes a better unit. As for QNAP, I've never touched one. So perhaps in the future, I'll look for a QNAP, preferably one that's been returned and, you know, at Amazon is discounted, because I don't have any use for it. But I just want to see, is it any really, is there, I know it's not going to have as many apps as Synology has. But will it offer something my clients can benefit from over and above the Synologies they have now? There's no way for me to know until I get my hands on one and try it. I don't necessarily have any use for these myself, other than I can store YouTube videos on, which I do at Studio A, and I don't really have anything set up like that here. So I could put this in use just because it's here, but I probably won't. So in any event, thank you for letting me demo this and letting me erase it and reset it.
Of course.
Thank you to all of you watching. Thanks for all of the support and contributions. Our friend Peter Laycock in Scotland, and of course, John Jack Wilson. Thanks also to Gary Carbon and Find Me in Hawaii, Craig Casabona and Samuel Kowalski. Thanks also to Mike Visions and Todd Wickham with your contributions during today's broadcast. And if I've missed any emails or other contributions, my thanks go out to you as well. And thanks for participating in the chat room. I really appreciate the interaction, especially when it's sincere. And that's my favorite part of doing the videos. It's not any of this, it's my interaction with you guys. And I know only a fraction of viewers actually pop into the chat. So I hope if you're a lurker, regardless of whatever reason you have for not saying hello, I hope you will give that some reconsideration in a future broadcast and introduce yourself and say hello. We love like-minded, friendly individuals. And as long as you're friendly, you will be treated with kindness and respect. And what I'm thinking is once you actually reach out and say hello, you'll want to participate more, because if you enjoy these videos, you're not really getting the full experience. Those who participate enjoy them far more. You wouldn't know if you haven't participated. And there's no way anybody is going to do anything other than be kind to you unless what you're doing is rude. So come in, say hello, and introduce yourself. The worst that's going to happen is you're going to have people saying hello back to you from all over the world while we're live. And many people here in the chat have become virtual friends where they see each other and they like talking to each other, but this is the only place they ever meet. And they wouldn't have met each other any other way. That's really, really cool. Kelly says, Carey, I don't want to boost myself, but the storm that passed killed 3 people in Northern California. Holy cow, that's a real storm. Wow. Starshine says, thank you. Paul Garrett says, thanks. Sarge Tech says, thanks. Well, thanks again. And we will see you all very, very soon. I'll be back Monday at 1 o'clock my time. That's 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern for a members-only broadcast. That's for the supporters only. And I got some surprises for next week. You know what that means? I have no idea what's going on. The surprise isn't for you. It's for me. I don't know. I'm going to surprise myself. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.